Sabrina Baptiste stood frozen in the cathedral doorway, her hand instinctively covering her mouth. The bride's grandmother, laughing, radiant in silver silk, was Constance, the woman who'd screamed "whore" while shoving her pregnant body into a storm, and the groom adjusting his bow tie, kissing Charlotte's cheek, was Trevor, the father who never knew his twins existed. Her 6-year-old sat in her car outside. One word from her would detonate this wedding into ash. Her phone buzzed against her hip, Maya checking in from the parking lot with Amara and Caleb. The twins were getting restless, her best friend's text said. Maybe 10 minutes before they'd need bathroom breaks, snacks, the kind of attention that required leaving the safety of Maya's sedan. 10 minutes before her carefully constructed new life collided with the nightmare she'd spent 6 years escaping. The cathedral bells chimed 3 o'clock, their deep resonance making Sabrina flinch. The sound echoed too closely to the church bells from that terrible day, the day Constance had security remove her from the Whitmore estate while rain poured like divine judgment. Her clipboard trembled in her grip, the laminated schedule blurring as her vision narrowed. The scent of stargazer lilies drifted from the altar arrangements, the same flowers that had bloomed in the garden where she'd first kissed Trevor, where she'd believed his whispered promises about a future together. Charlotte's laughter drifted from the bridal suite somewhere above, bright and innocent and unaware. That sound, pure joy untouched by the rot beneath this perfect day, steadied Sabrina's racing pulse. Charlotte Callahan didn't deserve to have her wedding destroyed. She was 26 years old, a kindergarten teacher with kind eyes and her late mother's gentle smile. None of this was her fault. Cold sweat slicked Sabrina's palms as she calculated her options with the precision that had built Baptiste Events from nothing into one of the city's most sought-after wedding planning companies. 3 paths stretched before her, each one treacherous. Run. Grab the twins, drive straight through the night, forfeit the $15,000 payment that represented 3 months of operating costs. Tank the reputation she'd spent 6 years building, one small event at a time, proving she was more than the trash Constance had called her. Stay invisible. Execute the wedding with the flawless precision her clients paid for. Keep her head down. Pray that 6 years and a different hairstyle would be enough disguise. Collect her check and vanish before anyone recognized the maid who'd once scrubbed these same marble floors. Expose everything. Walk up to that altar right now and tell Charlotte exactly who her future mother-in-law really was. Show Trevor the photos of Caleb and Amara on her phone. Let him see his own features reflected in their faces. Watch this perfect society wedding crumble into the same ruin Constance had made of her life. Sabrina's fingers tightened around her clipboard until the metal clip bit into her palm. No, she wouldn't run. Not again, not ever again. She'd spent 6 years learning to stand upright under the weight of other people's judgment. She'd built something real, something that belonged to her alone. Constance Whitmore didn't get to steal that too. She'd survived 6 years by being invisible and careful, but running from this job, running from Constance and Trevor again, would prove that they still had power over her, that she was still the scared girl they'd thrown out. No, she was Sabrina Baptiste, owner of a successful company, mother of 2 brilliant children, survivor of worse than one awkward wedding. She would stay, execute flawlessly, and prove to herself that they couldn't make her run anymore. Decision made, Sabrina smoothed her black sheath dress, adjusted her headset, and stepped into the cathedral's soaring nave. Professional, invisible, temporary. She would execute this wedding with such perfection that no one would remember the planner's face, only the bride's happiness. And when it was over, she would collect her payment and disappear from the Whitmore family's orbit forever. She just had to survive the next 8 hours without her past and present colliding. The morning had started so differently. Sabrina woke at 5:30 to find Amara already awake, sitting cross-legged on her bed with the intensity only a 6-year-old could bring to serious contemplation. Her daughter's expression, thoughtful and slightly wounded, sent immediate alarm through Sabrina's chest. "Baby, what's wrong?" Sabrina climbed onto the bed, pulling Amara into her lap. The little girl's natural curls were flattened on one side from sleep, her princess nightgown twisted around her small frame. "Emma at school says I'm lucky because I have 2 mommies, you and Aunt Maya." Amara said slowly, working through a problem her kindergarten mind couldn't quite solve. But then she said, I'm unlucky because I don't have a daddy. Why don't we have a daddy, Mama? The question landed like it always did, a knife between Sabrina's ribs, sharp and familiar. She'd known this conversation was coming, had rehearsed various age-appropriate answers in the shower, during her commute, in the quiet moments before sleep. But preparation didn't make it hurt less. Before Sabrina could answer, Caleb appeared in the doorway, his matching curls sticking up at wild angles. Her son had his father's exact bone structure, the strong jaw, the deep-set eyes, the way his chin lifted when he was being defensive. The resemblance had terrified her from the moment he was born, a living reminder of everything she'd lost and everything Trevor had never known existed. We don't need a daddy, Caleb announced with the fierce certainty of a child defending his world. He climbed onto the bed, wedging himself between his mother and sister. We have Mama. That's better than a daddy who doesn't want us. Sabrina's heart cracked open. 6 years old, and her son already understood rejection as a theoretical concept. She pulled both children close, breathing in the sweet scent of their strawberry shampoo and the indefinable smell of childhood, innocence mixed with morning breath and the faint mustiness of well-loved stuffed animals. Listen to me, both of you, she said, voice steady despite the emotion threatening to spill over. You are the most wanted children in the entire world. I wanted you before you were born. I wanted you every single day since, and I will want you for the rest of my life. That's all that matters. But other kids have daddies, Amara persisted, her logic relentless. Where's ours? Sabrina chose her words with surgical care. Your biological father didn't know about you. That's my fault, not yours. And it's definitely not because you weren't wonderful enough or lovable enough. Sometimes grown-ups make complicated mistakes, and children shouldn't have to pay for them. Does he know about us now? Caleb asked, and Sabrina heard the hunger beneath his studied indifference. Her brave boy, pretending not to care about the absence that shaped his life. No, baby, he doesn't. Do you want him to? This from Amara, always the more emotionally direct of the twins. Sabrina pulled them closer, buying time while she sorted through 6 years of complicated feelings. Did she want Trevor to know? Part of her, the part that still carried scars from being thrown out pregnant, wanted him to suffer the knowledge of what he'd missed. But another part, the part that watched her children sleep peacefully in beds they'd never been forced to leave in the middle of the night, wanted to protect them from rejection more than she wanted revenge. I want you two to be happy and safe and loved, she finally said. That's all that matters to me. It wasn't an answer, and Caleb's skeptical expression said he knew it. But he was 6, not 16, so he accepted the deflection and started asking about breakfast instead. Amara followed his lead, and within minutes they were arguing about whether chocolate chip pancakes or waffles were superior. Sabrina made both, letting them eat in front of cartoons while she prepared for the longest day of her professional life. She'd packed her emergency wedding kit the night before: backup bobby pins, safety pins, fashion tape, stain remover, sewing kit, tampons, breath mints, tissues, and a flask of whiskey for truly catastrophic emergencies. Her garment bag held 3 outfit changes: professional black for setup, elegant gray for the ceremony, and a deep emerald cocktail dress for the reception. Every detail was planned, every contingency mapped, everything except the contingency of her past standing at the altar in a custom tuxedo. Maya arrived at 7:30, letting herself in with her key. She'd been Sabrina's roommate in college, her labor and delivery coach when the twins were born, her business partner when Baptiste events was just a dream scribbled on napkins. Maya knew every secret, every scar, every moment of weakness Sabrina had survived. Big day, Maya said, setting down a carrier with 3 lattes, 1 for each adult and a vanilla steamer for the twins to share. You ready? The Callahan-Whitmore wedding, Sabrina replied, using the safe distance of professional designation. 200 guests, cathedral ceremony, country club reception. I've coordinated bigger events. Maya's dark eyes saw straight through the deflection. Babe, the groom's last name is Whitmore. The mother of the groom is listed as Constance. You didn't think that was worth mentioning when you booked this client 6 weeks ago? Sabrina's hands stilled on the zipper of her garment bag. I didn't make the connection until the venue walkthrough. By then, the contract was signed, the deposit was cashed, and you know we need this job, Maya. The Henderson wedding canceled last month, and we've got that business loan payment due in 3 weeks. We'd figure it out, Maya said quietly. We always do. But you're walking into a building with the woman who destroyed your life and the man who let it happen. That's not about money anymore. That's about whether you're ready to face them. Was she ready? Sabrina had asked herself that question 500 times in the past 3 days. She'd built an entire life predicated on never having to answer it. She'd changed her last name from Wilson to Baptiste, her grandmother's maiden name, specifically to make herself harder to find. She'd avoided the social circles where she might encounter Trevor or his family. She'd turned down jobs at venues where the Whitmores were members. For 6 years, Sabrina had architected her existence around the principle of strategic invisibility. And now she was about to spend 12 hours in the same building as her nightmares, creating the most visible day of someone else's life. I don't have a choice, Sabrina said finally. The twins need stability. Baptiste Events needs this high-profile wedding, and I need to prove to myself that Constance Whitmore doesn't get to dictate where I'm allowed to exist. Maya studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, but I'm keeping the twins far away from that venue. We'll do the Children's Museum, maybe the park. I'm not bringing them anywhere near those people. Relief flooded through Sabrina's chest. Thank you. And if at any point this gets too intense, you text me red, and I'm coming to extract you. Understood? Understood. They finished their lattes in companionable silence while the twins argued over which cartoon character would win in a fight. Normal morning sounds, the kind Sabrina had fought tooth and nail to build. Whatever happened today, she reminded herself, she still had this. She still had her children, her business, her found family in Maya. Constance had taken a lot 6 years ago, but she hadn't taken everything. Though Sabrina couldn't shake the feeling that today, the final bill would come due. The cathedral was everything Sabrina had feared and nothing she'd expected. She arrived at 10:30, giving herself 5.5 hours before the ceremony to transform the soaring Gothic space into Charlotte's vision of romantic elegance. Her team of 4 was already unloading the rental truck, Jasmine and Marcus on floral arrangements, Devin on lighting, and Keisha coordinating with the caterers at the country club reception venue across town. Sabrina moved through the setup with the focused efficiency that had made her reputation. She'd learned early that perfection was the best armor. If every detail was flawless, if every moment unfolded according to plan, no one looked at the woman orchestrating events. They only saw the event itself. Invisibility through excellence, that was her strategy. The cathedral's vaulted ceilings soared 40 feet overhead, stained glass windows casting jewel-toned light across pale stone walls. It was beautiful in that ancient, slightly cold way of buildings that had witnessed centuries of human joy and sorrow. Sabrina directed Marcus and Jasmine to hang garlands of white roses and eucalyptus along the pews, soften the stone's severity with cascading greenery at the altar, create an Instagram-worthy moment at every turn. She was adjusting the angle of a spotlight when she heard footsteps on the marble behind her. Professional mask firmly in place, Sabrina turned, expecting the venue coordinator or perhaps an early vendor. Instead, she found a man who looked like grief, and determination had been carved into human form. He was tall, over 6 feet, with broad shoulders that spoke of manual labor in his youth, despite the expensive watch glinting on his wrist. Salt and pepper hair fell across his forehead, slightly too long for corporate perfection, and his face carried the kind of weathered handsomeness that came from years lived fully rather than carefully. Deep lines bracketed his mouth and crinkled at the corners of gray-blue eyes that were, at this moment, visibly wet with tears. He held a leather photo album, the kind with actual printed photographs inside, and he was staring at the altar with an expression that made Sabrina's chest ache in recognition. She knew that look. She'd worn it herself, though for different reasons. This was loss. This was love. This was a man standing in the space where his daughter would marry, and all he could see was the absence of the woman who should be standing beside him. Sabrina should have left, should have slipped away quietly, given him privacy for his grief. But something in the vulnerable curve of his shoulders, The way he clutched that album like it was the only solid thing in a tilting world made her feet root to the marble floor. The man must have sensed her presence because he looked up, startled. His hand moved quickly to wipe his eyes, a gesture so reflexively, masculine, hide the weakness, pretend strength, that Sabrina felt an unexpected surge of empathy. "I'm sorry," she said softly, keeping her distance. "I didn't mean to intrude. I'm the wedding planner. I can come back later if you need privacy." "No, it's—" His voice was rough, textured with emotion he was trying to swallow. "You're not intruding. This is your job. I'm the one who shouldn't be here yet." But he didn't move to leave. Instead, he looked back at the altar, then down at the photo album in his hands. Sabrina should have excused herself, should have gone back to supervising the floral installations. Instead, she heard herself say, "Are those from her wedding? Your daughter's mother?" The man's expression shifted, surprised that she'd intuited the connection, then something that might have been relief at being seen. "Yeah, Charlotte wants everything like her mother's wedding. The flowers, the music, even the timing of the ceremony. 3 o'clock, same as ours 27 years ago." He opened the album, angling it so Sabrina could see without having to step closer. The photographs were from a different era, the late 1990s, judging by the fashion and the graininess of the film. But the joy radiating from every image was timeless. A bride with dark hair and a smile that could power cities. A groom who looked like a younger, less weather-worn version of the man standing before her, gazing at his bride like she'd hung the stars specifically for his benefit. She was beautiful, Sabrina said, and meant it. The woman in the photos had the kind of beauty that came from inner light rather than careful construction. "Your daughter has her smile." "Everyone says that," the man replied, voice thick. "Charlotte even stands like her sometimes, this little hip tilt thing when she's thinking. Lydia used to do the same thing when she was deciding whether to tell me I was being an idiot." The tenderness in how he spoke his late wife's name made Sabrina's throat tight. This was what love looked like after death, not the sanitized, distant memory people claim to feel for the sake of appearances, but the raw, immediate loss that never quite scabbed over. "I'm sure she would have been so proud," Sabrina offered. It was a platitude, but sometimes platitudes existed because they were true. "She would have," the man agreed, "and she would have told me to stop crying and go help with setup instead of standing here being useless." He closed the album carefully, then extended his free hand. "I'm Daniel Callahan, father of the bride, professional mess." Sabrina shook his hand, feeling the calloused warmth of his palm against hers. "Sabrina Baptiste, wedding planner, professional fixer of messes." His smile transformed his face, grief receding enough to let humor break through. "Then we should get along well. I specialize in creating messes, and you specialize in fixing them." The handshake lasted a half-second longer than professional courtesy required. Long enough for Sabrina to notice the strength in his grip, the way his thumb brushed across her knuckles before releasing. Long enough to feel a spark of something she had no business feeling. Not here, not now, not with the father of a client whose wedding she was planning while Trevor Whitmore's family paid her bills. She stepped back, reclaiming the safe distance of professionalism. "Can I ask you something, Mr. Callahan?" "Daniel," he corrected gently. "And yes. Does Charlotte really want her wedding exactly like her mother's? Or does she think that's what you want?" Daniel's expression flickered, surprise again, then something deeper as he actually considered the question. I don't know. She said she wanted everything the same. The flowers, the readings, the first dance song. I thought it was her way of including Lydia in the day." "It might be," Sabrina said carefully. She was overstepping, offering unsolicited insight into family dynamics she had no right to analyze. But something about Daniel's raw honesty made her want to give him the truth in return. "Or it might be her way of trying to make you happy. Grief makes people do complicated things. Sometimes we honor the dead by recreating what they had, and sometimes we honor them by creating something new that they would have loved." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implications Sabrina hadn't intended. She was talking about weddings and flowers and late wives, but she was also talking about herself, about the way she'd tried to recreate safety after Trevor by building a life so controlled, so carefully planned, that chaos couldn't reach her twins. about the way fear sometimes masqueraded as protection. Daniel was staring at her with an intensity that made her skin warm, not the assessing look men sometimes gave her, evaluating her body, calculating their chances, but something that felt like being truly seen, like he'd heard what she said and what she hadn't said, and both mattered equally. "That's the kindest thing anyone has said to me in 3 years," he said quietly. "Everyone keeps telling me Charlotte is doing great, that she's healing, that the wedding is therapeutic. You're the first person who suggested she might be taking care of me instead of herself." "I don't know your daughter," Sabrina said quickly, trying to rebuild the professional distance she'd let slip. "I could be completely wrong." "But you're not?" Daniel looked back at the photos of his wedding, something shifting in his expression. "Lydia would have liked you. She always said I needed people who would challenge me instead of just agreeing with whatever I said." The past tense, would have liked, not would like, made Sabrina's chest ache. She sounds like she was wonderful. She was. Daniel closed the album with gentle finality. "But she's gone. And somehow I have to figure out how to be present for Charlotte's wedding instead of drowning and missing what should have been." The honesty in his voice, the sheer vulnerability of admitting struggle instead of pretending strength, made something crack open in Sabrina's carefully guarded heart. She knew what it felt like to perform normalcy while everything inside screamed. She'd been doing it for 6 years. "You don't have to have it figured out," she heard herself say. "You just have to show up. That's all anyone can do." Daniel met her eyes, and the gratitude in his gaze made her breath catch. "Thank you, Sabrina, for the permission to be a mess." She smiled despite herself. "I'm very good at working with messes. It's literally my job description." They stood there for a moment, something indefinable passing between them. Recognition, perhaps, or the kind of instant connection that happens when two people realize they speak the same language of survival. Then, Sabrina's radio crackled with Jasmine's voice, asking about the placement of the unity candle, and the spell broke. "I should let you get back to work," Daniel said, though he didn't immediately move. "And you should probably go make sure Charlotte hasn't stress-eaten all the getting-ready snacks," Sabrina replied. "Brides need protein before they try to fit into fitted bodices." Daniel laughed, a real laugh that chased some of the grief from his features. Practical wisdom from someone who's clearly done this before. 217 weddings, Sabrina confirmed. This will be 218. Then Charlotte is in excellent hands. He turned to leave, and Sabrina felt an unexpected pang at his departure, which was ridiculous. He was the father of her client, probably 20 years her senior, and she was standing in a cathedral where she would spend the next several hours avoiding recognition by the family who'd destroyed her life. This was not the moment for inconvenient attraction to kind men with sad eyes and genuine smiles. But then Daniel reached the doorway and looked back, and the expression on his face made her pulse jump despite every logical reason it shouldn't. "Sabrina?" he called across the marble expanse. "Yes? I hope I see you again today, not just in passing while you're working. Actually see you." Before she could formulate a response that was professional and discouraging and safe, he was gone. Sabrina stood alone in the cathedral, surrounded by half-finished floral arrangements and the ghost of a conversation that felt far more significant than it should. Her hands were trembling slightly, adrenaline and something else, something she refused to name, flooding her system. This was a complication she hadn't planned for. Daniel Callahan with his grief and his honesty and the way he'd looked at her like she mattered, like her thoughts were valuable and her insights worth considering, like she was someone worth seeing. No. Sabrina shook her head sharply, clearing the dangerous softness trying to take root in her chest. She couldn't afford distractions, couldn't afford to be seen. She was here to do a job and disappear. That was the plan. That had always been the plan. But as she directed Jasmine to adjust the rose garland angles, she couldn't quite stop replaying the warmth in Daniel's voice when he'd said her name. The afternoon accelerated into controlled chaos. By 1:30, the cathedral was transformed. Sabrina stood at the back of the nave, mentally checking every detail against her master timeline. White roses and eucalyptus garlands adorned every pew end, their fragrance mixing with the stone-cold air. Pillar candles in hurricane glasses lined the aisle, unlit but ready. The altar featured a dramatic installation of cream roses, white hydrangeas, and cascading greenery that would photograph beautifully. Lighting cues were programmed, music cues were confirmed with the string quartet, and the unity candle sat ready on its designated table. Everything was perfect, except for the knot of dread in Sabrina's stomach that tightened with each passing minute. At 2 o'clock, the first guests would begin arriving. At 2:15, the mothers would be seated. At 2:45, the groom and his mother would take their places. And at 3 o'clock precisely, Charlotte Callahan would walk down the aisle on her father's arm to marry Trevor Whitmore. Sabrina had 90 minutes before she would see Constance again. 90 minutes before she would watch Trevor stand at that altar, promising forever to a woman who actually got to keep him. 90 minutes to prepare for a confrontation that might not even happen because maybe, just maybe, 6 years and a new last name and a different hairstyle would be enough disguise. Maybe they wouldn't recognize her at all. That hope shattered at 1:45 when Sabrina heard heels clicking on marble behind her and turned to find Constance Whitmore sweeping through the cathedral doors like she owned the building, God, and everyone in between. She looked exactly the same. Silver hair in an elaborate updo, pearl choker at her throat, a dress that probably cost more than Sabrina's car. Her face had the smooth, tight look of excellent cosmetic work, age erased through money and determination, but her eyes, pale blue and sharp as surgical steel, those were unchanged, still assessing, still finding everything and everyone slightly beneath her standards. Constance's gaze swept the cathedral, cataloging every detail with the intensity of a general inspecting troops. Then her eyes landed on Sabrina, and something flickered in their depths. Not recognition, not yet, but something adjacent to it. A nagging sense of familiarity, a puzzle piece that didn't quite fit. "You must be the wedding planner," Constance said, her voice carrying the patrician accent of old money and older prejudices. She didn't extend her hand. "Sabrina Baptiste," Sabrina replied, keeping her voice professionally neutral. "We spoke on the phone several times during the planning process." "Did we?" Constance tilted her head, studying Sabrina's face with uncomfortable intensity. "You seem familiar. Have we met before?" Sabrina's heart hammered against her ribs so hard she was certain Constance could see it through her dress. "I don't believe so, ma'am. I have one of those faces. People often think they've met me before." It was a lie. Sabrina had a striking face. High cheekbones, full lips, skin the color of warm honey that glowed against the severe black of her work uniform. She'd learned young that beautiful black women were both hypervisible and completely invisible, depending on context and the observer's prejudices. In Constance's world, people like Sabrina were furniture, present, functional, and entirely interchangeable. Except Sabrina hadn't always been furniture to this family. For 3 months, 6 years ago, she'd been a threat. Constance's eyes narrowed slightly, but she didn't pursue the thread. Instead, she shifted into inspection mode, finding fault with professional precision. "The floral arrangements are too loose. They look messy. And that unity candle is off-center by at least 2 inches. This is a society wedding, Miss Baptiste, not a barn party. I expected better for what we're paying." Every word was a small knife, delivered with the kind of casual cruelty that came from a lifetime of never being challenged. Sabrina had encountered dozens of Constances over her career, wealthy women who treated vendors like servants and found fault because it confirmed their superiority. Usually, she let it slide off her professional armor, collected her check, and moved on. But this wasn't just any client. This was the woman who'd called her a whore while having security physically remove her from the Whitmore estate. This was the woman who'd told Trevor that Sabrina was a gold-digging opportunist trying to trap him with a baby that probably wasn't even his. This was the woman who'd destroyed Sabrina's life with the same casual cruelty she was currently using to critique floral arrangements. Sabrina's fingers tightened on her clipboard, nails biting into laminated paper. She wanted to scream, wanted to grab Constance by her expensive silk collar and ask if she remembered the girl she'd thrown out 6 years ago. Wanted to show her the photos on her phone, Amara and Caleb, living proof that Sabrina hadn't been lying, hadn't been scheming, had just been 24 and pregnant and terrified. Instead, she said with perfect professional composure, The florals are exactly as specified in the contract Charlotte approved, and I measured the unity candle placement myself. It's precisely centered. But if you'd like changes, I'm happy to make them. That is what you're paying me for. The subtle emphasis on Charlotte's name, a reminder that this was the bride's wedding, not the mother of the grooms, landed exactly as intended. Constance's spine straightened, offense flaring in her eyes. "I know my future daughter-in-law," Constance said coldly. "She's a sweet girl, but easily influenced. If these arrangements don't meet proper standards, they meet Baptiste events standards," Sabrina interrupted smoothly, "which is why your son's fiancé hired me. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to coordinate with the musicians. The ceremony begins in 75 minutes. She turned to walk away, a calculated power move, dismissing Constance before Constance could dismiss her, when Constance's voice stopped her cold. "Wait." Sabrina's shoulders tensed. Every instinct screamed at her to keep walking, but professional obligation made her turn back. "Yes, ma'am." Constance was staring at her with unsettling focus, head tilted like a bird of prey, spotting movement in the grass. "Your voice. Something about your voice is very familiar. As I said, I have a common—" "No." Constance stepped closer, invading Sabrina's personal space with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no. "I know I've heard your voice before. And your face. There's something about your face." Sabrina forced herself to meet Constance's gaze steadily, to not flinch or look away or show any of the panic clawing up her throat. 6 years ago, she'd been a 24-year-old maid with her natural hair in braids and her body soft with pregnancy weight. Now she was 30 pounds lighter, with her hair professionally straightened and her face made up with subtle contouring. She looked different. She had to look different. "I'm sure we haven't met," Sabrina said firmly. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I really do need to check on the musicians." This time she didn't wait for permission. She walked away with measured steps, not hurrying despite the adrenaline screaming at her to run. Behind her she could feel Constance's gaze boring into her back, wheels turning, memory churning through years of discarded faces trying to place where she'd seen this wedding planner before. Sabrina made it to the side chapel before her knees buckled. She braced herself against the cool stone wall, breathing hard, trying to slow her racing heart. Maya's voice echoed in her head. "Text, read, and I'm coming to extract you." But Sabrina couldn't leave. Leaving meant giving Constance power. Leaving meant admitting defeat. And Sabrina had survived 6 years of single motherhood, financial terror, and the kind of exhaustion that made bones ache, all to prove that she was stronger than the woman who'd tried to break her. She would not run, not from Constance, not from this cathedral, not from the life she'd built through sheer force of will. Her phone buzzed. A text from Maya with a photo attached. Caleb and Amara at the Children's Museum, wearing oversized astronaut helmets, grinning at the camera. The message read, "Your babies are safe and happy. You've got this." Sabrina closed her eyes, centered herself, and straightened her spine. She did have this. She'd coordinated more complicated events, managed more difficult clients, navigated more treacherous social situations. This wedding was just another job. In 8 hours, it would be over. She would collect her check, delete the Callahan-Whitmore wedding from her schedule, and never have to see these people again. She just had to make it through 8 hours. When Sabrina emerged from the side chapel, she found Daniel Callahan standing in the nave, looking around with obvious confusion. Their eyes met across the space, and his expression shifted from uncertain to relieved. "There you are," he said, closing the distance between them. "I was looking for you." "Is something wrong with Charlotte?" Professional concern immediately overrode personal anxiety. Bride emergencies took precedence over everything. "No, she's fine. Great, actually. The hairstylist is finishing up, and she's eating the protein snacks you recommended." Daniel's smile was warm, grateful. "I came looking for you because I wanted to thank you." "For what?" "For what you said earlier, about honoring Lydia by creating something new instead of recreating what was." He glanced around the cathedral, seeing the flowers and candles and careful beauty Sabrina had orchestrated. "I talked to Charlotte, really talked to her instead of just accepting what she said she wanted, and you were right. She's been trying to make me happy instead of thinking about what she actually wants." Sabrina's heart did something complicated in her chest. "What did she say?" that she wants her mother present, but not as a ghost. Daniel's voice was thick with emotion. She wants to honor Lydia without being haunted by her. So we're keeping the timing and the readings, but she's changing the flowers and the music to things that feel like her, not like her mother's wedding replayed. That's good, Sabrina said softly. That's really good, Daniel. It's because of you. He stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something with cedar and citrus, masculine but not overwhelming. You saw something in 10 minutes that I've been too close to see for months. So thank you. The gratitude in his voice, the way he was looking at her like she'd given him something precious, made Sabrina's carefully maintained emotional distance start to crumble. This was dangerous. This warmth in her chest, this awareness of his proximity, this ridiculous flutter when he said her name, all of it was dangerous. She couldn't afford to feel anything for Daniel Callahan beyond professional courtesy. But she couldn't quite make herself step back either. I'm glad I could help, she managed. Your daughter deserves a wedding that's hers. She does, and so do you. The words hung between them, weighted with implications Sabrina couldn't interpret. Before she could ask what he meant, Daniel was reaching out, his hand moving toward her face. She should have stepped back, should have reminded him of professional boundaries, should have done literally anything except stand frozen while his fingers brushed her cheek, tucking a loose curl behind her ear. Sorry, he said, voice rough. You had rose petals in your hair. His hand lingered, thumb grazing her cheekbone, and the touch sent electricity down her spine. They were standing too close, looking at each other too intently. This was crossing lines that shouldn't be crossed, especially not in a cathedral 90 minutes before his daughter's wedding while the twins' biological father was somewhere in this building. But Sabrina couldn't make herself move. Daniel, she whispered, not sure if it was a protest or a plea. His eyes dropped to her lips and her breath caught. This was insane. This was impossible. This was... Dad? They sprang apart like guilty teenagers caught necking in the parking lot. Charlotte Callahan stood in the doorway to the bridal suite, her hair in curlers and her robe tied loosely, staring at her father and her wedding planner with obvious confusion. Charlotte? Daniel's voice was too loud, too bright. You look beautiful. How's the getting ready going? Charlotte's eyes narrowed, looking between them with the keen perception of someone who knew her father too well to miss the flustered energy radiating from his body. It's fine. What are you doing out here? Thanking Ms. Baptiste for her excellent advice, Daniel said, recovering some composure. She's been incredibly helpful with some last-minute adjustments. Right. Charlotte's tone suggested she wasn't entirely convinced, but she had bigger things to focus on. Well, Grandmother Constance is here, and she's critiquing everything. Can you please go distract her before she reduces the florist to tears? Every muscle in Sabrina's body went rigid at the mention of Constance. Daniel must have noticed because concern flickered across his face, but Charlotte was already continuing. And Ms. Baptiste, do you have a second? I want to make sure the something borrowed tradition is set up correctly. Of course, Sabrina summoned her professional smile, grateful for the escape route. Lead the way. She followed Charlotte toward the bridal suite, hyper-aware of Daniel's gaze following her until she disappeared around the corner. Her face was still warm from where his thumb had traced her cheekbone. Her pulse was still racing from how close they'd been to... what? Kissing? In the middle of his daughter's wedding venue while Constance Whitmore prowled the building looking for reasons to be cruel. Sabrina was smarter than this. She'd spent 6 years being smart, being careful, being strategic about every decision. She didn't take risks. She didn't let her guard down. She definitely didn't develop feelings for clients' fathers while planning weddings that connected her to her traumatic past. Except apparently, she did exactly that. Because when Charlotte led her into the bridal suite and immediately started chattering about her late mother's necklace, Sabrina realized with horrifying clarity that she was in serious trouble. Not because of Constance or Trevor or the risk of exposure, but because somewhere between this morning's grief and this afternoon's rose petals, she'd started falling for Daniel Callahan. And there wasn't a timeline or a checklist or a professional protocol that could fix that kind of complication. Chapter 2. The bridal suite smelled like hairspray, champagne, and the particular brand of controlled chaos that preceded every wedding Sabrina had ever coordinated. Charlotte sat at the vanity while her makeup artist applied the finishing touches, bridesmaids fluttering around her like anxious butterflies in their dove-gray dresses. Lydia Callahan's necklace, a delicate strand of pearls with a diamond clasp, lay in its velvet box on the dressing table, waiting to complete the transformation from daughter to bride. "My mom wore this on her wedding day," Charlotte said, touching the pearls with reverent fingers, "and her mother before that. It's the something borrowed I'm supposed to return to Dad after the ceremony, but honestly, I think he'd want me to keep it." Sabrina's throat tightened watching Charlotte handle the heirloom with such love. This girl had lost her mother at 23, spent the past 3 years navigating grief while planning a wedding that should have been joyful instead of bittersweet. She deserved better than to marry into a family that had treated Sabrina like disposable trash. But that wasn't Sabrina's decision to make. Her job was to create a perfect day, not to warn Charlotte that her future grandmother-in-law was a monster and her fiancé carried DNA that Sabrina's children shared. "It's beautiful," Sabrina said, forcing warmth into her voice. "The pearls will photograph gorgeously against your dress. When do you want to put it on?" "Right before I walk down the aisle. Dad's going to help me with the clasp." Charlotte's eyes misted. "It'll be our moment together before he gives me away." The sweetness of it made Sabrina want to scream. Daniel helping his daughter with her mother's necklace, a final private moment before letting her go, while Sabrina skulked in the shadows, praying no one recognized her. It was too much. The contrast between their legitimate family love, her illegitimate connection to this wedding, was a knife twisting in her chest. "That sounds perfect," Sabrina managed. "I'll make sure we have a photographer ready to capture it." Her phone buzzed, a text from Jasmine reporting that guests were beginning to arrive. 45 minutes until ceremony time. 45 minutes until Sabrina would have to watch Trevor Whitmore take vows she'd once believed he might someday take with her. Not that she'd loved him. Not really. Looking back with 6 years of clarity, Sabrina understood she'd been infatuated with the idea of Trevor. Wealthy, charming, someone who'd seemed to see past her position as household staff to the person underneath. She'd been 24 and naive, working 3 jobs to pay for her business degree at night school, and Trevor's attention had felt like validation that she was more than her circumstances. She'd learned better. Love that dissolved under family pressure wasn't love. It was convenience masquerading as connection. But the twins, Amara and Caleb, with their gap-toothed smiles and relentless questions and the way they tangled themselves around her legs every morning, they weren't a mistake. They were the only purely good thing to come from that relationship. And if Trevor learned about them today, if Constance connected the dots, Sabrina would spend the rest of her life fighting for custody against people with unlimited legal resources and no moral scruples. The stakes weren't just her pride anymore. They were her children's safety. "Ms. Baptiste?" Charlotte was looking at her with concern. "Are you okay? You look pale." Sabrina smoothed her features into professional composure. "I'm fine. Just running through my mental checklist. Big weddings always make me a little anxious until everything's underway." It was a lie Charlotte wanted to believe, so she accepted it with a smile and turned back to her reflection. Sabrina excused herself, citing a need to check on the ushers, and escaped into the hallway where she could breathe without performing calm. She made it 3 steps before nearly colliding with Trevor Whitmore. He was adjusting his bow tie in a hallway mirror, his profile achingly familiar despite 6 years of distance. The same strong jaw Caleb had inherited, the same deep-set eyes that looked back at Sabrina from Amara's face every morning. He'd aged well, filled out in the shoulders, lost the boyish softness that had made him handsome at 27. Now he looked like what he'd always been. Money and privilege wrapped in good genetics and better tailoring. Sabrina's feet froze. She should turn around, take the other corridor, avoid this confrontation entirely. But her body wouldn't obey. She stood paralyzed 3 feet from the man who'd gotten her pregnant and then vanished from her life and waited for recognition to dawn. It didn't. Trevor glanced at her reflection in the mirror, a quick, dismissive assessment, then returned his attention to his bow tie. "Excuse me. Could you help with this? My hands are shaking and I can't get it straight." He thought she was venue staff. After 4 months of sleeping together, after whispered promises and stolen nights and the desperate intensity of clandestine romance, Trevor Whitmore looked at Sabrina Baptiste and saw furniture asking her to fix his tie. The rage that flooded through her was bright and clarifying. She could refuse, should refuse, should say in a cold, professional voice that she was the wedding planner, not his personal assistant, and walk away with her dignity intact. Instead, she heard herself say, "Of course." She stepped forward, close enough to smell his cologne, different from what he'd worn 6 years ago, more expensive, less youthful. Her fingers worked the silk of his bow tie with practiced efficiency, while Trevor stared at his reflection, completely oblivious to the woman standing inches away. "Nervous?" Sabrina asked, testing whether her voice would trigger memory. "Terrified," Trevor admitted with a self-deprecating laugh. "My mother keeps telling me marriage is serious business, family legacy, all that. Makes it sound like a corporate merger instead of a wedding." "Is that what it feels like to you?" The question came out sharper than she'd intended. "A business arrangement?" Trevor finally looked at her, really looked, eyes meeting hers in the mirror, and Sabrina's pulse spiked. This was it. The moment recognition would click, the moment her carefully constructed invisibility would shatter. But Trevor just shrugged. "No, I love Charlotte. She's perfect, sweet, understanding, from a good family. My mother approves, which makes everything easier." He paused, something flickering across his face. "Your voice sounds familiar. Have we met?" "I don't think so," Sabrina lied, finishing the bow tie and stepping back. "I just have one of those voices." She turned to leave before he could study her face any longer, but Trevor's voice stopped her. "Wait, what's your name?" Every instinct screamed at her to lie, to give a fake name, to protect herself from the inevitable explosion. But lying would only make things worse when the truth eventually surfaced. So Sabrina turned back, lifted her chin, and said with perfect clarity, "Sabrina Baptiste, I'm the wedding planner." Trevor's brow furrowed slightly. "Baptiste, that's an unusual last name." "It's French Creole, my grandmother's family." All true, though she'd been born Sabrina Wilson and only taken her grandmother's name after fleeing the Whitmore estate. "Well, thank you for the tie assistance, Miss Baptiste." Trevor smiled, the same charming smile that had once made her believe in fairy tales, and walked toward the groom's ready room without a backward glance. Sabrina stood alone in the hallway, hands trembling with adrenaline and fury, and something that might have been grief for the girl she'd been 6 years ago. The girl who'd believed that smile meant something, who'd thought a man from a wealthy family could actually love the maid who cleaned his mother's house. She'd been so stupid, and she'd paid for that stupidity in ways Trevor would never understand, because he'd never bothered to look back. Her phone buzzed. "Maya." "Twins are getting restless. How much longer?" Sabrina typed back. 3 hours minimum. Can you keep them occupied?" "Maya, we'll manage." "But Sabrina, Amara keeps asking about the man on TV who looks like Caleb." The wedding announcement was on the local news this morning. She saw Trevor's picture. Sabrina's blood turned to ice. She'd been so careful to keep the twins away from anything Whitmore-related, had vetted their media consumption, had controlled every variable she could. But she hadn't thought about local news coverage of a society wedding. "Did she say anything else?" Sabrina texted. "Just that he has Caleb's smile." "I distracted her with ice cream, but she's perceptive, babe. At some point she's going to ask harder questions." Sabrina leaned against the wall, overwhelmed by the impossible situation she'd engineered. She'd thought 6 years was enough distance, thought a new name and a new life would insulate her children from the truth, but genetics didn't care about protective parenting. Caleb and Amara were walking evidence of a past that refused to stay buried. Another text from Maya. "What if you just told him? Before he figures it out on his own, and destroy Charlotte's wedding?" Sabrina typed back. "She doesn't deserve that. But you deserve peace, and those kids deserve honesty. After the wedding. I'll figure it out after the wedding." It was a promise she had no idea how to keep. The ceremony began at 3 o'clock precisely, sunlight streaming through stained glass to paint the assembled guests in jewel tones. Sabrina stood at the back of the cathedral, headset on, coordinating the processional with practiced efficiency. Bridesmaids glided down the aisle in perfect formation. The flower girl scattered petals with serious concentration. The music swelled at exactly the right moments. Everything was perfect. except for Daniel Callahan, who kept looking back at Sabrina with an intensity that made her skin warm despite the cathedral's cool air. And Constance Whitmore, who sat in the front row with her spine rigid and her eyes sharp, occasionally glancing back at Sabrina like a puzzle she couldn't quite solve. And Trevor, who stood at the altar looking nervous and earnest, and completely oblivious to the fact that his children were less than a mile away. When Charlotte appeared at the cathedral entrance, a vision in ivory lace with Lydia's pearls at her throat, the assembled guests rose as one. But Sabrina only had eyes for Daniel. The way his face crumpled with emotion, seeing his daughter transformed into a bride. The way he blinked rapidly, fighting tears. The way he straightened his shoulders, gathering strength to do the hardest thing a father does: let go. Father and daughter walked down the aisle in perfect rhythm, Charlotte's hand resting in the crook of Daniel's elbow. When they reached the altar, the officiant asked the traditional question, "Who gives this woman to be married?" Daniel's voice was steady despite the tears on his cheeks. "Her mother and I do." The inclusion of Lydia, the acknowledgement that he wasn't surrendering Charlotte alone, made several guests reach for tissues. Sabrina's own eyes burned, though she couldn't afford to cry. She had 3 more hours of coordination ahead, including a complicated reception timeline and a surprise fireworks display. There was no space in her schedule for emotion. But watching Daniel kiss Charlotte's cheek, watching him shake Trevor's hand and return to his seat alone, Sabrina felt something crack open in her chest. This was what love looked like when it was real. Not Trevor's convenient affection that had crumbled under his mother's disapproval, but Daniel's fierce devotion that persisted even through death and grief. She wanted that. God help her. She wanted someone to look at her the way Daniel had looked at Charlotte, like she was worth every sacrifice, every hardship, every moment of pain. The ceremony proceeded smoothly. Vows were exchanged, rings presented, the unity candle lit. When the officiant pronounced Trevor and Charlotte husband and wife, applause filled the cathedral. Sabrina should have felt triumph, another flawless wedding execution, another satisfied client, another glowing reference for her portfolio. Instead, she felt hollow. The recessional music began, and the newly married couple swept back down the aisle, followed by their wedding party. Sabrina directed guests toward the receiving line, coordinated the transition to the reception venue, and managed 17 small crises that no one but her would ever know had happened. She was excellent at her job. She was always excellent at her job, but excellence felt like ashes in her mouth. By the time she arrived at the country club for the reception, Sabrina's professional mask was cracking at the edges. She'd been running on adrenaline for 8 hours, hyper-vigilant about avoiding recognition, and the strain was showing. Maya's texts had become increasingly urgent. The twins were exhausted. Caleb was asking when Mama was coming home, and the babysitter situation was reaching critical mass. Sabrina texted back, 2 more hours. I'm so sorry. Maya, don't apologize. But babe, you need to figure out an exit strategy. This isn't sustainable. She was right. Sabrina knew she was right, but exit strategy meant confronting Daniel about the connection between his daughter's new husband and Sabrina's children. It meant professional suicide when word got out that she'd hidden this explosive secret while taking the family's money. It meant risking everything she'd built, and increasingly, it meant walking away from Daniel Callahan before whatever was sparking between them could catch fire. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered automatically, expecting a vendor issue. Sabrina? Daniel's voice, warm and slightly nervous. I hope it's okay that I got your number from the contract paperwork. Her pulse jumped despite every logical reason it shouldn't. Is everything all right? Is Charlotte's perfect. The ceremony was perfect. You're a miracle worker. He paused. I'm calling because I need to know something. That note I left you this morning. Did you get it? Sabrina's mind raced back to the morning setup, the envelope she'd found on her planning station. In the chaos of the day, she'd shoved it in her bag unread. I saw it but haven't had a chance to read it yet. Is it urgent? Yes, no, maybe. Daniel's laugh was self-deprecating. I'm making a mess of this. Can I see you? Tonight, after the reception? Every cell in Sabrina's body screamed yes, but her brain, The part that had kept her alive and her children safe for 6 years, knew better. Daniel, I don't think that's a good idea. Why not? Because I'm hiding secrets that will destroy your daughter's marriage, because your son-in-law is my children's father, because I'm falling for you and I can't afford to fall for anyone, especially not someone connected to my past. Because you're the father of my client, Sabrina said instead. There are professional boundaries I need to maintain. The wedding's almost over. In 2 hours, I won't be a client's father anymore. I'll just be a man who'd really like to have coffee with you. The sincerity in his voice made her chest ache. Daniel, please, just coffee, just talking. I know something's going on with you, Sabrina. I see how tense you are, how carefully you're controlling everything. And I don't know what it is, but I want to understand. I want to help if I can. You can't help, she whispered, and the truth of it nearly broke her. Then let me try anyway. The kindness in his voice, the genuine desire to ease her burden without even knowing what that burden was, undid something fundamental in Sabrina's defenses. She was so tired of being strong alone, tired of keeping secrets, tired of pretending she didn't want exactly what Daniel was offering. After the wedding, she heard herself say, we'll talk. But Daniel, there are things you need to know about me, things that might change how you feel about coffee. Even as she said yes, Sabrina's mind screamed warnings. This was how it started with Trevor. Connection that felt special, attention that felt genuine, right up until it all collapsed. But Daniel wasn't Trevor. Everything about him was different. The way he listened, the way he asked instead of assumed, the way he made her feel seen instead of collected. Or maybe she was making the same mistake twice, and this time she'd have further to fall. Impossible. Don't be so sure. I am sure. His voice dropped lower, intimate despite the phone line between them. Whatever you need to tell me, we'll figure it out. Together. Together. The word hung in the air like a promise she desperately wanted to keep and absolutely couldn't afford to make. I have to go, Sabrina said. The reception is starting and I need to coordinate. Okay. But Sabrina? Yes? I meant every word in that note. He hung up before she could respond. Sabrina stood in the country club hallway, phone pressed to her ear long after the line went dead, and finally surrendered to the truth she'd been avoiding all day. She was in serious trouble, and not the kind her professional skills could fix. The reception unfolded like a carefully choreographed ballet. Sabrina directed the grand entrance, coordinated the first dances, managed the dinner service, and ensured every toast landed at exactly the right moment. From the outside, she was the picture of professional competence. Inside, she was fracturing, because Daniel wouldn't stop looking at her. Across the ballroom during Charlotte's father-daughter dance, his eyes found hers. While he gave his toast, funny and heartfelt and perfectly pitched, he looked directly at Sabrina when he talked about finding unexpected blessings in dark times. When the bouquet toss happened and Maya's text came through with a photo of the sleeping twins, Sabrina glanced up to find Daniel watching her with an expression that made her knees weak. He saw her, really saw her, in a way Trevor never had and most people never bothered to. And God, it was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. The evening crescendoed toward the couple's departure. Charlotte and Trevor would leave in a shower of sparklers, drive to the airport, catch a red-eye to their Hawaiian honeymoon. In 30 minutes, Sabrina's job would be complete. She could collect her final payment, say goodbye to the Callahan-Whitmore wedding, and never see these people again. Except Daniel had her phone number, and she'd promised him coffee. And some traitorous part of her was already imagining what it would feel like to sit across a table from him, no professional obligations between them, and just talk. She was helping the catering staff clear champagne glasses when Constance Whitmore appeared at her elbow, like a bad omen manifesting from expensive perfume and malice. Ms. Baptiste! Constance's voice was sharp enough to cut glass. A word! Sabrina's stomach plummeted, but she followed Constance to a quiet corner of the ballroom where the music was muted and privacy was possible. This was it. Recognition had finally clicked. 6 years of running was about to end in spectacular implosion. I've been watching you all evening, Constance said, her pale eyes boring into Sabrina's face. And I've figured out what's familiar about you. Sabrina's pulse roared in her ears. Ma'am? You remind me of someone very unpleasant from my past, someone common and grasping who tried to trap my son with a pregnancy lie. Constance's lips curled in distaste. I had her removed from our property 6 years ago, and good riddance. She was exactly the type to seduce a man above her station, then claim the child was his to secure a payday. The casual cruelty in how Constance dismissed Sabrina's entire life, reduced her to common and grasping, erased her humanity to the level of con artist, made rage burn through Sabrina's chest, but beneath the rage was fear. If Constance was thinking about 6 years ago, she was dangerously close to making the connection. That sounds difficult, Sabrina managed through gritted teeth. Oh, it was nothing I couldn't handle. A little money, a few threats, and the problem disappeared. Constance waved her hand dismissively. Though I'll admit, you have the same quality. That ambitious look in the eyes. The way you've been watching Daniel Callahan all evening. Sabrina went very still. Excuse me? Don't play coy. I've seen how you look at him, how he looks at you. Constance stepped closer, voice dropping to a vicious whisper. Daniel is wealthy and lonely and vulnerable. The perfect target for a woman like you. But let me be very clear, Ms. Baptiste. If you think you can trap him the way that Maid tried to trap my son, you are gravely mistaken. The accusation was so wrong and so close to the truth simultaneously that Sabrina nearly laughed. Constance had connected the dots backward. She saw Sabrina as a threat to Daniel, not as the woman she destroyed 6 years ago. The irony was almost beautiful. I'm not trying to trap anyone, Sabrina said coldly. I'm trying to do my job and go home. Good. See that you do. Constance's smile was all teeth, no warmth. Women like you always think you're special, that your particular combination of looks and ambition will be enough to rise above your station. But men like Daniel Callahan don't marry women like you. They use you and discard you. Remember that. The words hit like a physical blow, not because Sabrina believed them, but because she'd spent 6 years fighting the voice in her head that said exactly the same thing. She wasn't enough. She would never be enough. People like the Whitmores and Callahans existed in a different stratosphere, and love couldn't bridge that gap. Except Daniel had been nothing but kind, nothing but genuine, nothing but honest about his grief and his struggles and his growing feelings for her. Sabrina straightened her spine and met Constance's gaze with steel in her own. I appreciate your concern, Mrs. Whitmore, but I'm quite capable of managing my own relationships. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a wedding to finish coordinating. She turned to walk away, but Constance's voice followed her. I will remember where I've seen you. It's on the tip of my tongue. And when I do remember, Ms. Baptiste, you'll regret ever accepting this job. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Sabrina kept walking, kept her spine straight and her pace measured until she reached the kitchen where staff wouldn't see her hands shake or her composure crack. Maya found her there 5 minutes later, hyperventilating into a paper bag while a sympathetic caterer brought her water. What happened? Constance happened. Sabrina's voice was muffled by the bag. She's figured out I remind her of someone from 6 years ago. She hasn't connected all the dots yet, but she will. Then we leave. Right now. Forget the final walkthrough, forget the tip from Daniel. We grab the twins and go. I can't. Sabrina lowered the bag, eyes blazing. I won't let her win again, Maya. I won't run like I'm ashamed of existing. But the twins are safe with you in the parking lot, far away from this building. We have 90 minutes until Charlotte and Trevor leave. I can do 90 minutes. Maya studied her friend's face, then sighed. You're also staying because of Daniel. It wasn't a question. Sabrina didn't bother denying it. He asked me for coffee after the wedding. Are you going to tell him? I have to. He deserves to know why his daughter's marriage is connected to my children. Sabrina's laugh was bitter. And then he'll walk away like every other man with the good sense to avoid complicated women. Or, Maya said quietly, he'll surprise you. Some men actually have spines, Sabrina. Not all of them are Trevor. The kitchen door swung open, and Daniel himself appeared, looking slightly frantic. His eyes locked on Sabrina, relief flooding his features. There you are. I've been looking everywhere for you. Maya took that as her cue to exit, shooting Sabrina a meaningful look before disappearing back into the reception. leaving Sabrina alone with Daniel in a country club kitchen while her entire carefully constructed world teetered on the edge of collapse. "Is something wrong?" Sabrina asked, forcing her professional mask back into place. "Constance said something to you." It wasn't a question. "I saw you leave together, then she came back looking satisfied and you didn't come back at all." "What did she say?" The protective anger in his voice made Sabrina's throat tight. "Nothing I can't handle." "That's not an answer." "It's the only answer I can give you right now." Daniel closed the distance between them, and Sabrina's breath caught. They were standing too close, close enough that she could see the flecks of darker blue in his gray eyes, close enough that his presence seemed to take up all the oxygen in the industrial kitchen. "I don't know what history you have with the Whitmores," Daniel said quietly, "but I know Constance is a venomous woman who takes pleasure in cruelty. Whatever she said to you, don't let it land. That's easier said than done." "I know." His hand lifted, hovering near her cheek before dropping back to his side. "But Sabrina, you're not whatever she tried to make you feel small for being. You're brilliant and kind and stronger than anyone I've met, and if she can't see that, she's blind." The compliment hit harder than Constance's insults had. Because Daniel meant it, she could see the sincerity in his eyes, hear it in his voice, feel it in the space between their bodies. "You don't know me," Sabrina whispered. "Not really." "Then let me learn." His voice dropped lower, intimate and rough. "Come home with me tonight. After this is all over. We'll have that coffee, we'll talk, and you'll tell me whatever's making you look like you're carrying the weight of the world." "Daniel, I can't." "Why not?" "Because your son-in-law is my children's father. Because I've been lying to you since we met. Because the moment you know the truth, you'll see me the way Constance does, as someone common and grasping who doesn't belong in your world. But standing in this kitchen with Daniel looking at her like she was someone worth fighting for, Sabrina couldn't make herself say any of that. So instead, she said the only thing that was completely true. "Because I'm terrified." Daniel's expression softened. "Of me? Of this? Of you? Of wanting something I can't have? Why can't you have it?" "Because nothing good ever happens when I want something this badly." The confession hung between them, raw and honest. Daniel reached out slowly, giving her time to step back, and when she didn't, his hand cupped her cheek. The touch sent electricity down her spine, the same spark from earlier, but stronger now, undeniable. "What if I want it too?" he said softly. "What if I'm terrified and doing it anyway?" Sabrina's eyes burned with unshed tears. "Then we're both idiots." "Probably." His thumb stroked her cheekbone, and she couldn't help but lean into the touch. "But I haven't felt alive in 3 years, Sabrina. And when you walk into a room, I remember what breathing feels like. So if that makes me an idiot, I'll be an idiot." She should stop this, should step back, reclaim professional distance, protect them both from the inevitable heartbreak when truth detonated her life. But Sabrina was so tired of being strong, so tired of being alone, and Daniel's hand on her face felt like the first safe place she'd found in 6 years. "Coffee," she heard herself whisper. "Just coffee." "Just coffee," he agreed, but his eyes said something different. His eyes said everything. They stood like that for a long moment, foreheads almost touching, sharing breath, teetering on the edge of something that felt inevitable and impossible in equal measure. Then the kitchen door swung open and a caterer appeared, stopping short at the scene. "Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to." Sabrina stepped back quickly, cheeks burning. "It's fine. We were just finishing up." Daniel's hand fell away reluctantly, but his gaze never left her face. "I should get back to the reception. Charlotte will be leaving soon." "Right, yes, I need to coordinate the sparkler send-off." They edged around each other in the doorway, the space too small, their bodies brushing. The contact was brief but electric. When Sabrina emerged back into the reception, she felt like every guest could see the truth written on her face. She was falling for Daniel Callahan, and it was going to ruin everything. The sparkler send-off went perfectly. Charlotte and Trevor ran through the tunnel of light, laughing and kissing, before climbing into the waiting limousine. The assembled guests cheered and threw rice, and Sabrina coordinated it all with flawless precision, despite the way her heart hammered every time she caught Daniel's eye across the crowd. As the last guests trickled out and vendors began breakdown, Sabrina was checking final details on her clipboard when her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. A photo appeared. Sabrina and Daniel in the country club kitchen, standing close, his hand on her face. The angle suggested it had been taken through a window or doorway. No message, just the photo. Sabrina's blood ran cold. Someone had been watching them, photographing them. A second text arrived. "I'm watching." She looked around the emptying ballroom, skin prickling with the sensation of being observed. But she saw no one suspicious, just tired staff and Daniel across the room talking to Charlotte. Her phone buzzed again. "Stay away from him. This is your only warning." The number was blocked, untraceable. But Sabrina knew exactly who was behind it. Constance wasn't done with her, not by a long shot. She was checking off final items on her clipboard when Daniel appeared at her elbow, startling her so badly she dropped her pen. "Sorry," he said, bending to retrieve it. When he straightened, he was close enough that she could smell his cologne again, cedar and citrus and something uniquely him. "I didn't mean to scare you." "It's fine. I was just concentrating." Sabrina took the pen back, fingers brushing as in the exchange. "Did you need something? The final payment can be processed through our normal channels." "I don't want to talk about payment." Daniel's voice was low, intimate, meant only for her. "I want to talk about tonight, about coffee, about that look on your face that says you're about to run." Sabrina's defenses slammed back into place. "I'm not running. I'm working." "You've been working for 12 hours. Your staff can handle the rest." He reached out, gently took her clipboard, and handed it to a passing Jasmine with instructions to finish the cleanup checklist. Jasmine shot Sabrina a knowing grin and vanished with the clipboard, leaving her boss defenseless. "Daniel, that's my job. Your job is done. The wedding was perfect. Charlotte is happy. Now it's time for the wedding planner to go home." His hand found hers, warm and solid. "Come with me. Please." Every rational objection Sabrina had prepared crumbled under the simple sincerity in his voice. She should say no. Should text Maya to bring the twins, should drive home to her small apartment, should put distance between herself and this man before she did something catastrophically stupid. Instead, she heard herself say, "Just for an hour. I need to check on my kids." "Bring them." The offer was immediate, without hesitation. "I want to meet them." Panic spiked through Sabrina's chest. "Daniel, no. They're 6 years old and exhausted. This isn't the right time." "Then we'll go to your place, or we'll sit in my car and talk." "I don't care where we are, Sabrina. I just want to be with you." The raw honesty of it undid her. This man, this kind, grieving, impossibly good man, wanted to be with her, wanted to meet her children, wanted to navigate the complications she carried like armor. And she had no idea how to tell him that those complications included his daughter's new husband. 1 hour, she agreed finally. "Your place. But Daniel, I meant what I said earlier. There are things you need to know about me. And once you know them, you might not want that coffee anymore." "Impossible." "Stop saying that. Stop assuming I'll walk away." His thumb traced circles on the back of her hand, the touch electric and grounding simultaneously. "I watched my wife die over 2 years, Sabrina. I held her hand while cancer ate her from the inside. You think complicated scares me?" The comparison made Sabrina's eyes burn. "This is a different kind of complicated. Then we'll figure it out differently." Daniel lifted her hand, pressed a kiss to her knuckles. The gesture was old-fashioned and devastating. "Go check on your kids, make sure they're settled. Then come over. I'll text you my address." He released her hand and walked away before she could second-guess the decision, leaving Sabrina standing in the country club driveway with her pulse racing and her mind screaming warnings her heart refused to hear. Maya appeared from the parking lot, twins in tow. Both children were sleepy and cranky from hours in the car, but they brightened when they saw their mother. Sabrina knelt, wrapping them in a fierce hug that had Caleb squirming and Amara giggling. "Can we go home now?" Caleb asked. "I'm tired." "Soon, baby. Mama just needs to finish a few things." Maya pulled Sabrina aside while the twins climbed into her car. "You're going to his place. Just for an hour. To talk." "You're going to tell him?" "I have to. He deserves to know why his daughter's marriage is a minefield." Sabrina's hands were shaking. And then he'll probably ask me to never contact him again, and I'll have to live with that. Or, Maya said gently, he'll surprise you. Lightning doesn't strike twice in the same place, Maya. I already got struck once with Trevor, and look how that ended. Daniel isn't Trevor, and you're not that scared 24-year-old anymore. Maya squeezed her friend's shoulder. Go, be brave, and text me if you need extraction. Sabrina nodded, though she felt anything but brave. She felt like she was walking toward a cliff edge, knowing the fall would hurt, but unable to stop her momentum. She secured the twins in their car seats, gave them each a kiss, and promised they'd be home soon. Then, she sat in her car in the dark parking lot and read the note Daniel had left that morning, the note she'd shoved in her bag unread. The handwriting was masculine and slightly messy, words pressed hard into the paper like the emotion behind them needed physical force to contain. Sabrina. I don't usually do this, haven't felt anything but grief for 3 years, but last night, working beside you in your office, I felt something shift, like a door opening in a room I thought was permanently closed. I know this is complicated. You're working. I'm the father of the bride. This weekend isn't about us. But after Charlotte's wedding, after the professional obligations are satisfied, could we have coffee? Just to see if what I felt last night was real, or if I'm so desperate for connection that I'm inventing it. I hope I'm not wrong about this. About you. About the way you looked at me when I caught you on that ladder. I hope you'll say yes. Daniel. At the bottom was his phone number and a P.S. If you're reading this during the wedding and freaking out, take a breath. We'll figure it out, whatever it is. Sabrina read the note 3 times, memorizing every word. Then she started her car, pulled up the GPS coordinates Daniel had texted, and drove toward a conversation that would either save her or destroy her. She just couldn't predict which. Chapter 3. Daniel's house was exactly what Sabrina expected, and nothing she'd prepared for. It sat at the end of a tree-lined street in one of the city's older, wealthier neighborhoods, the kind where money whispered instead of shouted. A 2-story craftsman with warm light glowing through curtained windows, a porch swing moving slightly in the evening breeze, and flower beds that looked lovingly maintained despite the owner's grief. This was a home, not a showpiece, the kind of place where a family had laughed and argued and built memories, the kind of place Sabrina had dreamed of giving her children before reality taught her to dream smaller. She sat in her car for a full minute, engine off, hands gripping the steering wheel hard enough to hurt. Through the front window, she could see Daniel moving around inside, probably straightening up, making coffee, preparing for a conversation he thought would be about getting to know each other better. He had no idea she was about to detonate a bomb in his life. Sabrina pulled out her phone, typed a text to Maya. I'm here. If you don't hear from me in 2 hours, assume it went badly. Maya's response was immediate. You've got this, and even if he walks away, you'll still be the strongest woman I know. The validation steadied her enough to get out of the car. She walked up the path, climbed the porch steps, and raised her hand to knock. Before her knuckles made contact, the door swung open to reveal Daniel, barefoot in jeans and a gray Henley that did unfair things to his shoulders. I heard your car, he said, smiling in a way that made her chest ache. I've been watching for you. The simple admission, no games, no pretending he hadn't been waiting, made Sabrina want to cry and run in equal measure. Instead, she stepped inside when he moved back to allow her entry. The interior matched the exterior's warmth. Hardwood floors, well-worn furniture, photographs covering every surface. But it was the photos that made Sabrina's breath catch. Lydia was everywhere, smiling from frames on the mantel, laughing in candid shots on the bookshelf, holding a newborn Charlotte in a hospital bed. The house was a shrine to a woman who'd been deeply loved and was still desperately missed. Sabrina felt like an intruder. Worse, she felt like a replacement. The other woman stepping into a space that rightfully belonged to someone else. I know it's a lot, Daniel said quietly, following her gaze. Charlotte keeps telling me I should take some of them down, says it's not healthy to live in a museum, but I can't bring myself to pack them away. You shouldn't have to, Sabrina said, meaning it. She was your wife for 25 years. That doesn't disappear because she's gone. Daniel's expression shifted, gratitude mixed with something deeper. Most people want me to move on, Act like Lydia never existed. You're the first person who seems to understand that loving her and being ready to live again aren't mutually exclusive. The observation hit too close to truth Sabrina wasn't ready to face. She'd loved the idea of Trevor, but had been ready to live again within months of his betrayal. What did that say about the depth of her feelings? Or maybe the real question was, what did Daniel's lingering love for Lydia say about his capacity for devotion? This man didn't abandon people when things got hard, which meant when he learned the truth about Sabrina's connection to Trevor, the rejection would come from principle, not cowardice. Somehow that felt worse. "Coffee?" Daniel asked, gesturing toward the kitchen. "Please." She followed him into a kitchen that was clearly Lydia's domain. Herb garden in the window, collection of vintage cookware, a bulletin board covered in Charlotte's childhood artwork and family photos. Daniel moved through the space with comfortable familiarity, pulling mugs from a cabinet, preparing the coffee maker with practiced efficiency. "Cream? Sugar?" he asked. "Black is fine." While the coffee brewed, Daniel leaned against the counter, studying her with disconcerting intensity. "You look terrified. Should I be worried?" "Probably." The word came out before Sabrina could soften it. Daniel's eyebrows rose, but instead of pulling back, he moved closer. "Sabrina, whatever you need to tell me, we can handle it. Are you married? Wanted by the police? In witness protection?" Despite everything, she almost laughed. "No, no, and no." "Then what could possibly be bad enough to make you look like you're about to bolt out that door?" The coffee maker beeped. Daniel poured 2 mugs, handed her one, and waited. His patience was somehow worse than if he'd pushed. It gave her space to gather words she didn't want to say. Sabrina took a sip of coffee, using the moment to organize her thoughts. Then she set the mug down, met Daniel's eyes, and took the leap. "I need to tell you about something that happened 6 years ago. Something that involves your daughter's new husband." Daniel's expression shifted subtly, concern replacing curiosity. "Okay." 6 years ago, I was working 3 jobs while finishing my business degree at night. One of those jobs was housekeeping for a wealthy family. Sabrina's hands were trembling, so she wrapped them around the warm mug for stability. The son of the family. We started seeing each other. It was secret because his mother would never have approved of him dating the help. But I was 24 and stupid, and I believed him when he said we'd find a way to be together. Daniel was very still, listening with complete focus. "I got pregnant," Sabrina continued, voice steady despite the emotion threatening to break through. "Twins. When his mother found out, she had security physically remove me from their property, threw me out in a rainstorm while I was 3 months pregnant, called me a whore and a gold digger, and told me I'd never see her son again." "Jesus," Daniel breathed. "I tried to contact him, called, sent messages, even went back to the house, but his mother had me blocked at every level. And he," Sabrina's voice cracked slightly, "he never came looking, never questioned his mother's version of events. Just let me disappear." Daniel set down his coffee mug and moved closer, but didn't touch her. "The twins I saw you texting about, those are his children?" "Biologically, yes, but he doesn't know they exist. I've spent 6 years building a life for them away from his family, away from people who would see them as mistakes instead of miracles." "They're not mistakes," Daniel said fiercely. "Children are never mistakes." The automatic defense of her children from a man who'd only heard about them in passing made Sabrina's eyes burn. "Thank you for saying that." "I'm not just saying it." Daniel stepped closer still, and now they were in the dangerous territory of shared breath and impossible proximity. "I mean it. You raised twins alone while building a business and surviving whatever trauma that family inflicted. That's not a cautionary tale, Sabrina. That's heroic." She shook her head, unable to accept the praise. "Daniel, you're not hearing what I'm telling you. The father of my children." Her phone rang, shattering the moment. Maya's name flashed on the screen. Sabrina almost ignored it, but Maya knew not to call unless it was urgent. She answered, stepping away from Daniel's intensity. "What's wrong?" "Sabrina," Maya's voice was tight with controlled panic. "The twins' babysitter just called. Her mother had a heart attack. She had to rush to the hospital immediately. Her teenage daughter agreed to stay with the twins at my apartment until we can get there. But the girl is only 14 and she's freaking out. I'm heading back now, but I'm 20 minutes away." Can you get there faster? Sabrina's mind raced. I'm at the country club, about 15 minutes from your place. I'll head there now. Thank you. The girl's name is Emma. I gave her your number. The twins are fine, but asking for you. She hung up and turned to find Daniel watching her with concern. Emergency? I have to go. My kids, their babysitter had a family crisis and they're alone with a teenager who's not equipped to handle them. Then bring them here. The offer was immediate and genuine. Sabrina's first instinct was to refuse, but looking at Daniel's open, honest face, she found herself calculating logistics. Maya's apartment was 40 minutes away round trip. If she left now, picked up the twins, drove back to her own place, it would be nearly 11 before they were settled. The kids were already exhausted from the long day. Or she could bring them here, let them fall asleep on Daniel's couch while she finished the conversation that would end whatever this was before it started. Are you sure? Sabrina asked. Completely. Daniel grabbed his keys. I'll follow you. That way if you change your mind you can go straight home and I won't know your address to bother you. The joke was meant to lighten the moment, but it only highlighted what Sabrina was about to destroy. Daniel was kind and thoughtful and decent, and in approximately 90 minutes she was going to tell him that his daughter had married the biological father of her children and watch him realize the complications were too deep to navigate. Okay, she said quietly. Let's go get my kids. Amara and Caleb were wired from too much sugar and too little routine when Sabrina arrived at Maya's apartment. The babysitter's teenage daughter looked relieved to the point of tears when adult supervision appeared. They're really energetic, the girl said, understating drastically as Caleb ran circles around the living room while Amara tried to teach herself to cartwheel. And they keep asking questions I don't know how to answer. Like what? Sabrina asked, already corralling her son mid-sprint. Like why that man on TV earlier looks like Caleb. The teenager's expression was apologetic. I didn't know what to say, so I just turned off the TV and gave them cookies. Sabrina's blood ran cold. What man on TV? The wedding thing on the news? Some rich people getting married at the cathedral? The girl shrugged. I wasn't really paying attention, but Amara got really excited and said the groom looked just like her brother. This was the nightmare Sabrina had feared, not Constance recognizing her, not Trevor making the connection, but her own children with their innocent observation and genetic literacy, pointing out the resemblance she'd spent 6 years trying to hide. She thanked the teenager, collected the twins' overnight bags, and ushered both children out to her car where Daniel was waiting by his truck. The moment Caleb and Amara saw a stranger, they went shy, hiding partially behind their mother's legs. Guys, this is Mr. Callahan, Sabrina said, kneeling to their level. He's a friend. We're going to his house for a little while so I can finish talking to him about work, okay? Does he have toys? Caleb asked, direct as always. Daniel crouched down too, bringing himself to the twins' height. I have some old toys in the garage from when my daughter was little, and I have a big backyard with a swing set if your mom says it's okay. Can we, Mama? Amara's eyes lit up. Sabrina looked at Daniel, found him smiling at her children with genuine warmth, and her carefully constructed walls crack further. It's already 9:30. You two can play for just a few more minutes, but then it's definitely bedtime. The drive back to Daniel's place took 20 minutes, during which Sabrina's mind raced through worst-case scenarios. What if the twins said something about the man from TV? What if Caleb's resemblance to Trevor was obvious to Daniel? What if bringing her children here accelerated the truth explosion instead of giving her time to control the narrative? But when they arrived, Daniel's house worked its magic. He dug out a bin of Charlotte's old toys from the garage, slightly dated but well-maintained, and the twins fell on them with the enthusiasm only children could muster at 9 p.m. when they should be exhausted. Daniel even found an old DVD of an animated movie, set them up in the living room with blankets and pillows, and let them settle into the comfortable haze of tired children given one last reprieve before bed. Sabrina and Daniel retreated to the kitchen, where they could hear the twins but have semi-private conversation. They're beautiful, Daniel said, watching through the doorway as Caleb explained something very serious to his sister while the movie played. They look just like you. Except they didn't, not entirely. Amara had Sabrina's eyes and smile, but her bone structure was pure Trevor. And Caleb was almost entirely his father's child. The same jaw, the same build, the same way he tilted his head when thinking. Anyone who knew Trevor well would see the resemblance immediately. But Daniel had only met Trevor as his daughter's fiancé. He'd shaken the man's hand, made polite conversation, given his blessing. He didn't know Trevor well enough to see his features reflected in 6-year-old faces. Yet. "Daniel," Sabrina started, voice low so the twins wouldn't hear. "Before I was interrupted, I was trying to tell you something important." About the twins' father. Daniel leaned against the counter, giving her space but staying close. "You don't have to tell me who he is, Sabrina. That's your business. Except it's not just my business." She took a deep breath, gathering courage. "It's yours too. Because the man who got me pregnant 6 years ago, the one whose mother threw me out, the one who never came looking." Her phone rang again. Constance's name flashed on the screen. Sabrina stared at it, adrenaline flooding her system. Why would Constance be calling her at 9:30 at night? They had no remaining business. The wedding was over, unless Constance had finally made the connection. "I have to take this," Sabrina said, answering before she could overthink it. "Hello? Miss Baptiste." Constance's voice was cold triumph. "I remembered where I know you from." The world tilted. Sabrina gripped the counter for stability, aware of Daniel watching her with growing concern. "I'm sorry?" "6 years ago, you were the maid in my house, the one who seduced my son and tried to trap him with a pregnancy lie." Constance's words dripped venom. "You've been in my presence all day, and I didn't recognize you because I never really looked at you back then. You were furniture. Irrelevant." "Mrs. Whitmore, I don't know what." "Don't lie." Constance's voice sharpened. "I'm looking at photographs from 6 years ago right now. Trevor's birthday party, the one where I discovered your disgusting little affair. You're in the background of several photos, and now that I'm actually looking, the resemblance is unmistakable. You changed your hair, lost weight, took a different last name, but you're the same grasping little opportunist who thought she could rise above her station." Sabrina closed her eyes, the inevitable crash finally arriving. "What do you want?" "I want you to stay away from Daniel Callahan." The demand was so unexpected that Sabrina's eyes flew open. "What?" "I saw how he looked at you tonight, how you looked at him." Constance's satisfaction was audible. "You're planning to do to him exactly what you tried to do to my son. Get pregnant, claim the child is his, secure a payday, but I won't let you ruin another family." The accusation was so far from reality that Sabrina almost laughed. "You have no idea what you're talking about." "Then prove me wrong. Walk away from Daniel, tonight, permanently, and I'll keep your secret." Constance paused, letting the threat land. "But if you pursue him, I'll tell everyone who you really are. I'll tell Charlotte that her wedding planner was my son's discarded mistress. I'll tell Daniel that you're a gold digger with a history of trapping wealthy men. I'll make sure Baptiste Events never works another society event in this city." "You can't." "I absolutely can. I have proof of who you were. I have the checks I paid you to disappear. Yes, Miss Baptiste, I do have receipts, despite your protests about never taking money. My lawyers documented everything." Another lie, delivered with perfect confidence. "So you have a choice. Walk away from Daniel, or I destroy everything you've built." The phone went dead. Sabrina stood in Daniel's kitchen, shaking with rage and fear, while her children watched cartoons in the next room, and the man she was falling for watched her with concern. "Sabrina," Daniel stepped closer. "What did she say?" This was it. The moment of choice. She could lie, could pretend the call was about wedding logistics, could walk away from Daniel and protect everything she'd built, keep her children safe from Constance's cruelty, preserve the business she'd sacrificed everything to create. Or she could tell Daniel the truth right now, before Constance poisoned his mind with lies, before the narrative was twisted beyond recognition. Sabrina looked at Daniel, at his kind eyes and patient expression and the gentle concern that radiated from every pore, and made her choice. "The twins' father," she said quietly. "The man who got me pregnant 6 years ago. The one whose mother just threatened to destroy my life if I don't stay away from you." Daniel went very still. "Who?" Sabrina forced the words past the constriction in her throat. Trevor Whitmore. your son-in-law." The color drained from Daniel's face. The silence stretched for an eternity measured in heartbeats. Daniel stared at Sabrina like she'd started speaking a language he didn't understand, his mind visibly working to process information that didn't compute. "Trevor," he finally said. "You're saying Trevor is the twins' biological father?" "Yes." "Trevor, who just married my daughter?" "Yes." "Trevor, whose mother threw you out 6 years ago while you were pregnant?" "Yes." Daniel turned away, one hand coming up to his mouth, the other bracing against the counter. His shoulders rose and fell with deep breaths, the kind of breathing people did when trying not to lose control. Sabrina stood frozen, waiting for the inevitable rejection, waiting for him to tell her to leave, waiting for disgust to replace the warmth that had been growing between them. Instead, Daniel turned back around, and his eyes were blazing with fury, but not at her. "He doesn't know," Daniel said. "Trevor doesn't know he has children. His mother made sure of it. She blocked all my attempts to contact him, and he never questioned her version of events, never tried to find me, never seemed to care what happened after I disappeared. Because he's a coward." Daniel's voice was quiet but fierce. "Because Constance raised him to value comfort over courage, and he chose his mother's approval over finding out the truth." The defense, immediate and unequivocal, made Sabrina's eyes burn. "Daniel, you understand what this means, right? If Charlotte stays married to Trevor, my children are biologically related to your daughter's husband. Our families are permanently entangled in the messiest way possible. I don't care about messy. I'm 52 years old, Sabrina. I spent 2 years watching my wife die. I learned that life is too short and too precious to run from things that matter. You should. Constance just threatened to destroy my business if I don't stay away from you. She'll make your daughter's life hell if she thinks I'm a threat. And Trevor, God, when he finds out about Caleb and Amara, everything will explode. Then let it explode." Daniel closed the distance between them, and now they were toe to toe, sharing breath, his intensity almost overwhelming. "Do you know what I see when I look at you, Sabrina?" "Someone complicated," she whispered. "I see someone who survived what would have broken most people. I see someone who built a business and raised 2 children alone and still has enough grace to be kind to strangers in cathedrals." His hands came up to frame her face, gentle despite the emotion vibrating through him. "I see someone worth fighting for." "You don't know me well enough to make that decision. Then give me time to know you better." "Daniel, you're not listening. If we do this, if we try to build something, Constance will use every weapon she has. She'll tell Charlotte lies about me. She'll turn Trevor against his own children. She'll make sure I can never work another high-profile wedding. Then we fight back." Daniel's thumbs stroked her cheekbones. "Together." The word made something crack open in Sabrina's chest. Together. She'd been alone for so long, shouldering every burden, fighting every battle, that the concept of partnership felt like a foreign language. "Why?" she asked, voice breaking. "Why would you want to take on this disaster?" "Because you matter." His forehead touched hers, and the intimacy of it stole her breath. "Because when I'm with you, I feel alive for the first time since Lydia died. Because those kids in my living room deserve better than growing up believing their father chose wealth over wanting them. And because Constance Whitmore doesn't get to dictate who I care about. You barely know me. I know enough, and I want to know more." Sabrina's hands came up, gripping his shirt, torn between pulling him closer and pushing him away. "This will hurt, Charlotte. Your daughter will hate me." "My daughter," Daniel said quietly, "will understand that love is complicated and families come in unexpected forms, and if she doesn't, we'll help her understand." "You're insane. This is insane." "Probably." His lips corked into a small smile. "But I watched my wife die while we were both still young. I learned that life is too short to run from things that matter. And you matter, Sabrina. What I feel when I look at you matters." She was crying now, silent tears tracking down her cheeks while Daniel held her face like she was something precious. "I'm so scared." "Me too." He kissed her forehead, gentle and reverent. "But I'm more scared of letting you walk away and spending the rest of my life wondering what we could have been." In the living room, the movie's credits were rolling. Amara called out, "Mama, we're tired. Can we go to sleep now?" The domestic interruption broke the spell. Sabrina stepped back, wiping her eyes, trying to pull herself together before facing her children. I should get them home. Stay. Daniel caught her hand. It's already past 10 and you've had wine. The twins are asleep upstairs, and moving them now will just wake them up and make everything harder. I have guest rooms. You'll all be more comfortable here than trying to get them into car seats and across town at this hour. Stay tonight, and tomorrow when everyone's rested, we'll figure out what comes next. Every logical objection Sabrina had was overruled by the exhaustion in her bones and the warmth in Daniel's eyes. One night, he agreed, and then we'll take it one day at a time. They walked into the living room together to find both twins fighting sleep, their small bodies curled against the couch cushions. Daniel scooped up Caleb with surprising ease, while Sabrina carried Amara upstairs to one of the guest rooms that had clearly been Charlotte's childhood bedroom. The room was frozen in time. Posters of boy bands from the early 2000s, a bookshelf full of young adult novels, a twin bed with a purple comforter. Daniel helped Sabrina settle the twins together in the bed, both children asleep before their heads hit the pillows. Standing in the doorway, watching her children sleep in a stranger's house, Sabrina felt something shift. This wasn't the ending she'd feared. It was a beginning she hadn't dared hope for. Thank you, she whispered to Daniel. For what? For not running? For listening? For not making me feel like I'm the problem? Daniel's arm came around her shoulders, drawing her against his side. You're not the problem, Sabrina. You're the solution I didn't know I was looking for. They stood like that for a long moment, watching the twins breathe in synchronization, before Daniel led her back downstairs. The coffee was long cold, but he poured them each a glass of wine instead, and they settled on the couch in his living room, Lydia's living room, technically, and talked. Sabrina told him everything, the whole story, from the first day she'd worked at the Whitmore estate to the night she'd been physically removed, the terror of learning she was pregnant with twins, the decision to change her name and start over, the 6 years of building Baptiste events while raising 2 children who asked increasingly pointed questions about their missing father. Daniel listened without judgment, asking clarifying questions but never making her feel interrogated. And when she finished, emotionally wrung out and raw, he told her his story. About Lydia's diagnosis, the 2-year battle that had been brutal and beautiful, the way his wife had planned her own memorial service, organized the house for Charlotte's future, and made him promise not to bury himself in grief when she was gone. About the guilt he felt wanting to live again, wanting to feel something besides hollow loss. Lydia told me the morning before she died that she wanted me to fall in love again, Daniel said quietly. She made me promise, said she wasn't leaving me to be lonely for the next 30 years. That must have been hard to hear. It was the greatest gift she ever gave me, permission to live. Daniel's hand found Sabrina's, their fingers interlacing naturally. So when I tell you that I'm choosing this, choosing us, choosing the complication, I'm doing it with Lydia's blessing. She would want me to fight for something that makes me feel alive. She sounds like she was extraordinary. She was, and I think she would have liked you. Daniel's thumb traced circles on the back of Sabrina's hand. You're both fighters, both stronger than circumstances tried to make you. They talked until past midnight, until words gave way to comfortable silence, and the weight of the day finally caught up with them both. Daniel offered to drive Sabrina home, but she was too tired, and the wine had made her drowsy. So he made up the other guest room with fresh sheets and gave her one of his old T-shirts to sleep in, and for the first time in 6 years, Sabrina fell asleep in someone else's home, feeling safe. Daniel woke before dawn, Sabrina asleep in his guest room, the twins in Charlotte's old room. He walked downstairs to find Lydia's photo on the mantel, their wedding day, her smile radiant. I hope you meant what you said, he whispered to the photo, about wanting me to live again, because I think I'm falling in love with her, Lydia, and I need to know that's okay. The house was silent, but in that silence, Daniel felt something shift. Not Lydia's presence exactly, but the absence of guilt, the permission he'd been seeking. Thank you, he said softly, for 25 beautiful years, and for setting me free to have more. Sabrina woke to the sound of children's laughter and the smell of pancakes, disoriented until the previous night's events came rushing back. She was in Daniel's house, her children were here, she'd told him everything, and he hadn't run. She found Daniel in the kitchen, flipping pancakes while Caleb and Amara sat at the counter in their clothes from yesterday, telling him everything 6-year-olds felt compelled to share. "And then Mama had to work at the big church with all the flowers," Amara was explaining, "and we waited in the car forever and I was so bored." "That does sound boring," Daniel agreed, sliding a perfect pancake onto her plate. "But your mama was making sure someone had the best wedding day ever. That's important work." "Are you Mama's boyfriend?" Caleb asked with 6-year-old bluntness. Sabrina nearly choked on air. "Caleb!" "It's okay." Daniel met Sabrina's eyes over the twins' heads, his smile warm. "That's a fair question. Caleb, I'd like to be your mama's friend. And if she's okay with it, maybe someday something more. But that's up to her." The answer was perfect. Honest but age-appropriate, giving Sabrina agency while making his intentions clear. Her children beamed at him, already half in love with anyone who made pancakes and answered questions seriously. They ate breakfast together, the 4 of them crowded around Daniel's kitchen table, and Sabrina felt something dangerous take root in her chest. This felt like family, like belonging, like the kind of morning she'd dreamed about during the darkest nights of single parenthood. But the fantasy couldn't last, because Sabrina's phone, charging on the counter, lit up with a text from an unknown number. "I know you stayed at his house. This is your final warning. Walk away, or I will destroy you." The message was followed by a photo. Sabrina's car parked in Daniel's driveway, time-stamped at 11 p.m. last night. Constance was watching, and she was making good on her threats. Sabrina's hands shook as she showed Daniel the text. His expression darkened to something dangerous. "This ends now," he said quietly. "Daniel, she has power, resources. She can make my life hell. And I have truth." Daniel stood, his entire bearing shifting from gentle to protective. "I'm calling Charlotte, right now, before Constance can poison her mind. She's on her honeymoon, and her grandmother is stalking her wedding planner. She needs to know what kind of person she just married into." Daniel was already pulling up his daughter's contact. "Charlotte deserves the truth, Sabrina, all of it." Before Sabrina could protest further, Charlotte answered via video call, her face sun-kissed and happy against a backdrop of Hawaiian beach. "Dad? Is everything okay?" Daniel glanced at Sabrina, silently asking permission. She nodded, unable to speak past the fear lodging in her throat. "Charlotte, I need to tell you something about Trevor's family," Daniel began. "About something that happened 6 years ago, and I need you to listen with an open mind and heart." Chapter 4. Charlotte's face filled Daniel's phone screen, her honeymoon glow fading as she registered her father's serious expression. Behind her, palm trees swayed in tropical wind, but the paradise setting couldn't soften the blow Daniel was about to deliver. "Dad, you're scaring me. What's wrong?" Daniel looked at Sabrina, who was frozen at the kitchen table with her twins happily eating pancakes, oblivious to the adult drama unfolding around them. She gave him a small nod, permission to detonate the truth that would change everything. "Charlotte, do you remember the wedding planner, Sabrina Baptiste?" "Of course, she was amazing. Why?" Charlotte's brow furrowed. "Did something go wrong after we left?" "No, the wedding was perfect. But there's something you need to know about her, about Trevor's family, about a secret that's been buried for 6 years. Daniel took a steadying breath. 6 years ago, Sabrina worked as a housekeeper for the Whitmore estate. She and Trevor were involved romantically. Charlotte's face went blank with shock. "What?" "She got pregnant, with twins, and when Constance found out, she had Sabrina physically removed from the property, threw her out in a rainstorm, called her," Daniel's voice hardened, "vicious names, and made sure Trevor never knew the truth." The silence on the other end stretched so long that Sabrina wondered if the connection had dropped. Then Charlotte's voice came through, small and shaking. "Trevor has children? He has 6-year-old twins who he's never met, because his mother convinced him that Sabrina was a gold digger, and he never questioned that narrative, never tried to find her, never asked for the truth." "Oh my God!" Charlotte's hand came up to cover her mouth. "Does he know? Now I mean, does Trevor know?" "No one knows except me, Sabrina, and now you. Constance figured out who Sabrina was last night and has been threatening her. That's why I'm calling. Because you deserve to know the truth before your grandmother turns this into something it's not." Charlotte was silent for a long moment, processing. When she spoke again, Her voice carried a steel Sabrina hadn't heard before. "Put Sabrina on the phone, please." Daniel handed the phone to Sabrina, who took it with trembling hands. "Charlotte, I'm so sorry." "Don't apologize." Charlotte's interruption was firm. "You didn't do anything wrong. My grandmother did, and apparently so did my husband." She paused, pain flickering across her face. "Can I see them? The twins?" Sabrina's breath caught. "You want to see them?" "They're my stepchildren, biologically speaking. And if what you're saying is true, and I believe it is because I know my grandmother, then they've been kept from their father for 6 years. So yes, I want to see them." Sabrina angled the phone to show Caleb and Amara at the kitchen table, faces sticky with syrup, arguing about whether dinosaurs or astronauts were cooler. Charlotte's face crumpled the moment she saw them. "They look just like him," she whispered. "Caleb especially. That's Trevor's smile." "I know." Sabrina's voice was thick with emotion. "I've spent 6 years seeing his face in my children and having no way to tell him." "Does Dad know? About you and Trevor, I mean?" "I told him last night. That's why I'm at his house this morning." Sabrina glanced at Daniel, who was watching her with steady support. "Your father has been incredibly kind about something that must be a nightmare for him to process." Charlotte laughed, but it sounded like crying. "That's just like him. Finding compassion even when the situation is impossible." She wiped her eyes. "Sabrina, I need you to do something for me. Anything. Don't let my grandmother bully you. She spent her entire life controlling people through fear and money, and she's very good at it. But you've already survived her once. You can do it again. She's threatening to destroy my business, and my father is one of the most connected developers in the city. He has resources too. Use them." Charlotte's jaw set. "I'm cutting my honeymoon short. Trevor and I will be home tomorrow afternoon, and we're going to deal with this head on, all of it." "Charlotte, you don't have to." "Yes, I do, because if my husband is a coward who abandoned his pregnant girlfriend because his mother told him to, I need to know that now. And if my grandmother has been lying about something this big, what else has she lied about?" Charlotte's eyes were fierce despite the tears. "Trevor and I had a long talk last night after the wedding, about his mother, about how controlling she is, about whether he can actually stand up to her." Sabrina's heart clenched. "And he said he could, said he was done letting her run his life. I guess we're about to find out if he meant it." Charlotte took a shaky breath. "I'm going to tell him, right now, about the twins, about what his mother did, and then we're getting on the first flight home." "Are you sure?" Sabrina asked. "You just got married. You should be enjoying your honeymoon." "I'll enjoy it a lot more when my husband's children know their father wants them, when my grandmother isn't threatening innocent people, and when I know whether my marriage is built on lies or can survive truth." Charlotte's smile was sad but determined. "Thank you, Sabrina, for telling the truth, for not running, for being braver than the people who should have protected you." The call ended, leaving Sabrina staring at the blank screen with tears streaming down her face. Daniel's arms came around her from behind, solid and warm, and she let herself lean into his strength. "That girl," Sabrina managed, "is nothing like her grandmother." "No," Daniel agreed, pressing a kiss to her temple. "She gets that from her mother." The next 3 days passed in strange suspension. Daniel and Sabrina talked every evening, the twins adjusting to the new presence of Mr. Daniel in their lives. Sabrina briefed her team at Baptiste events, delegating upcoming weddings in case the confrontation with Trevor and Constance required her full attention. Daniel texted throughout the day, checking on her, offering support, sending funny photos of his attempts to work from home while distracted by thoughts of her. The attention was overwhelming and addictive in equal measure. Sabrina found herself smiling at her phone like a teenager, then immediately panicking about what would happen when Trevor learned the truth. Maya came over late that night after the twins were finally asleep, demanding the full story. She'd taken them from the parking lot straight to Sabrina's apartment after the wedding ended, giving her friend space to deal with the Constance encounter and the confusing night with Daniel. Sabrina told her everything: Daniel's reaction, Charlotte's support, Constance's threats, the impossible tangle of emotions and logistics. So Charlotte is flying back from her honeymoon to confront her new husband about the secret children he doesn't know he has, while her father is dating the mother of said secret children, and the evil grandmother is trying to blackmail you into disappearing. Maya shook her head in disbelief. Babe, your life is literally a soap opera. I know. Sabrina buried her face in her hands. What if Trevor fights for custody? What if he has some legal right to take them from me? You've been their only parent for 6 years. No judge would remove them from a stable home. Maya's voice was fierce. And besides, Trevor would have to acknowledge he's their father first, which means admitting he got the help pregnant and never bothered to check if she was telling the truth. Not a great look for a banker trying to maintain his respectable image. It was a small comfort, but Sabrina clung to it. She'd built a life for her children. Whatever came next, that foundation wouldn't crumble. That night, Sabrina lay in bed staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. Her phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. Thinking about you, about them, about us. Whatever happens tomorrow, we face it together. She typed back, I'm terrified. His response was immediate. Me too, but I'd rather be terrified with you than safe without you. The words made her chest ache with hope and fear in equal measure. She'd spent 6 years protecting herself from this exact vulnerability, caring about someone enough that losing them would hurt. But it was too late. She was already in too deep with Daniel Callahan. Another text. Charlotte just landed. They took the red-eye last night and got in this morning. She and Trevor will be at my house at 2 p.m. She wants you there. Says the truth should come from you directly. Sabrina's hands shook as she typed, What if he's angry? What if he blames me? Then I'll stand between you and his anger. You're not alone in this anymore, Sabrina. Let me be there for you. She fell asleep clutching her phone, Daniel's words the last thing she read, and dreamed of outcomes both beautiful and catastrophic. 3 days after the wedding, 2 p.m. arrived with the weight of inevitability. Sabrina stood on Daniel's porch, twins beside her in their best clothes, Amara in a yellow sundress, Caleb in khakis and a polo shirt. Maya had stayed back at the apartment, ready for extraction if things went badly. Daniel answered the door before Sabrina could knock, his presence immediately calming her racing pulse. They're in the living room, he said quietly. Charlotte's nervous but determined. Trevor doesn't know why they're here yet. And Constance? Not invited. Daniel's smile was grim. Charlotte made that very clear. Sabrina nodded, took each twin's hand, and walked into the house that had somehow become a sanctuary in the past 48 hours. In the living room, Charlotte sat on the couch looking exhausted from travel but resolute. Trevor stood by the window, confused and slightly annoyed at having his honeymoon interrupted. The moment Trevor turned and saw Sabrina, his expression shifted from annoyed to confused. Then his gaze dropped to the children flanking her, and confusion became something else, something like dawning recognition mixed with horror. Sabrina, Trevor's voice was barely audible. Wilson? Sabrina Wilson. Baptiste now, she corrected, chin lifting. But yes, it's been 6 years. Trevor stared at her, then at the twins, then back at her. The color drained from his face as the pieces clicked into place. These are your children, Charlotte finished, her voice steady despite the tremor. Biologically speaking, this is Caleb and Amara Baptiste, your son and daughter. The silence that followed was so complete that Sabrina could hear her own heartbeat. Trevor looked like he'd been physically struck, his mouth opening and closing without sound. Caleb pressed closer to Sabrina's leg, sensing tension. Amara stared at Trevor with open curiosity. Are you our daddy? Amara asked, 6-year-old directness cutting through. The adult paralysis. Mama said we might meet him someday. Is today that day? Trevor's knees buckled. He caught himself on the windowsill, hand pressed to his chest like he was having a heart attack. This can't, it can, and it is. Charlotte stood, moving to Trevor's side but not touching him. 6 years ago, your mother found out Sabrina was pregnant, and instead of telling you, instead of letting you make your own choice, she had Sabrina thrown out and made sure you never knew. No, Trevor shook his head violently. Mother said she left on her own, said she stole jewelry, and your mother lied. Sabrina's voice cut through his denial, sharp and clear. She called me a whore, had security drag me off the property while I was 3 months pregnant, blocked every attempt I made to contact you. I tried, Trevor. For months I tried to tell you, but she made sure you'd never hear the truth. Trevor's face was gray, sweat beading on his forehead. He looked at the twins, really looked at them, and the resemblance must have been undeniable because something broke in his expression. Caleb. That's my middle name. I know, Sabrina's hands tightened on her children's shoulders. I thought if you ever did find out, you'd see that I'd honored you despite everything. God, Trevor's voice cracked. Oh God, what did I do? You believed your mother instead of looking for the truth, Daniel said, speaking for the first time. His voice was controlled but carried an edge that made Trevor flinch. You took the easy path, and these children paid the price. Trevor's eyes went to Daniel, recognition clicking. You're Charlotte's father. Why are you… Then understanding dawned. Oh no, you and Sabrina are none of your concern, Daniel finished. What is your concern is whether you're going to step up for your children or repeat your pattern of cowardice. The harsh assessment made Charlotte wince, but she didn't contradict it. Trevor looked devastated, lost, young despite being in his mid-30s. He took a hesitant step toward the twins, then stopped when Caleb moved behind Sabrina's legs. I'm sorry, Trevor whispered, and his voice broke on the words. I'm so sorry. I should have looked for you. Should have questioned her, should have is too late, Sabrina said, but her voice wasn't as hard as it could have been. Looking at Trevor's destroyed expression, she felt something shift. Not forgiveness, not yet, but recognition that he'd been manipulated too. The question is what you're going to do now. I want to know them. Trevor's hands were shaking. Please, I know I don't deserve it, but please let me know my children. Sabrina's jaw tightened. If you need a paternity test, I understand. I have nothing to hide. Trevor looked at Caleb and shook his head. I can see myself in their faces. But you're right, we should do it properly, for legal purposes, for medical records, for their future. Not because I doubt you, but because they deserve documentation. Thank you, Sabrina said quietly, for believing me first. Amara stepped forward, studying Trevor with the intense scrutiny only children achieved. You have Caleb's face and his eyes, but you're taller. Despite everything, Trevor laughed, a broken, wet sound. He crouched down to Amara's level, keeping distance but making eye contact. Yeah, I'm taller, but you're right, he looks like me. And you, his voice caught, you have the most beautiful smile I've ever seen. Mama says I have her smile. Your mama's right. Trevor's eyes were swimming with tears. Your mama's the bravest person I've ever met. I'm so sorry I wasn't brave enough to deserve her. The apology, raw and honest and directed at Sabrina through their daughter, made something in Sabrina's chest crack. She'd spent 6 years imagining this moment, picturing Trevor's denial or anger or attempts to take her children. She'd never imagined him broken and remorseful, genuinely destroyed by what his mother had stolen from all of them. Charlotte moved to Trevor's side, her hand on his shoulder offering support, even as her own eyes glistened with tears. We need to talk, she said to her husband, about your mother, about boundaries, about whether you can actually stand up to her or if you're going to let her control our marriage the way she controlled your relationship with Sabrina. I'll stand up to her. Trevor's voice was stronger now, anger beginning to replace shock. I'm done with her manipulation, done with her cruelty. She kept my children from me. She threw away the woman He stopped, glancing at Charlotte apologetically. The woman you loved? Charlotte finished, and there was pain in her voice, but also understanding. It's okay, Trevor. I need you to be honest about what she took from you. From all of us. Trevor nodded, unable to speak. He turned back to the twins who were watching this adult drama with confused fascination. Would it be okay if I spent time with you? Got to know you. I have 6 years to make up for. That's not your decision alone, Daniel interjected, his voice protective. Sabrina has raised these children alone. Any arrangement about Trevor's involvement goes through her first. Trevor flinched but nodded. You're right. Sabrina, I know I have no right to ask anything of you, but please let me try to be their father. Sabrina looked down at her twins. Caleb had emerged from behind her legs, studying Trevor with the same intensity as his sister. Both children seemed curious rather than frightened, their natural resilience protecting them from the full weight of adult complications. You don't get to be their father just by showing up, Sabrina said carefully. You have to earn that. Prove you're reliable. Prove you won't disappear when things get hard or when your mother pressures you. I will. Trevor's voice was fervent. I'll prove it, however long it takes. And you have to deal with Constance, Sabrina added, because she's threatening to destroy my business if I don't disappear from your lives. She was having me followed, Trevor, stalking me, sending threats. Trevor's face darkened with rage. She what? Charlotte pulled out her phone, showing him the threatening texts Constance had sent. With each message, Trevor's expression grew more horrified and furious. When Charlotte showed him the photo of Sabrina's car at Daniel's house, time-stamped and clearly taken by someone watching, Trevor stood abruptly. That's it, I'm done. He pulled out his own phone, fingers flying over the screen. I'm calling the family lawyer, right now. I want my name removed from any trust or inheritance she controls. I want a restraining order filed for stalking and harassment, and I want her to know that she just lost her son. Charlotte caught his arm. Trevor, think about this. Your whole financial life is tied to your mother's money. I don't care. Trevor's voice was absolute. Some things matter more than money. My children matter more. My wife matters more. My self-respect matters more. He looked at Sabrina. You built a life from nothing after my mother destroyed you. The least I can do is prove I'm not the coward you think I am. The next hour was a whirlwind of phone calls and revelations. Trevor's family lawyer, a man named Richard who'd clearly been expecting a call about honeymoon activities, not family dissolution, listened to the story with increasing alarm. Yes, stalking and harassment charges could be filed. Yes, Trevor could legally separate his finances from his mother's control, though it would take time and come with significant financial penalties. Yes, a restraining order was possible given the documentation. While Trevor handled legal matters, Charlotte sat with the twins, showing them pictures from the wedding on her phone and explaining in gentle, age-appropriate terms that she'd just married their biological father, which made her their stepmother in a complicated but real way. Does that mean we have a grandma? Amara asked, always focused on accumulating family. Charlotte's expression darkened slightly. You have one grandmother who isn't very nice, but you have a grandfather. My dad, Mr. Daniel, who already thinks you're wonderful. Both twins lit up at that, remembering the pancakes in the swing set and Daniel's patient answers to endless questions. Sabrina watched from across the room, Daniel's hand in hers, as Charlotte won over her children with the same kind warmth her father possessed. She's good with them, Sabrina murmured. She worked as a kindergarten teacher before the wedding, Daniel replied. She's always loved kids, wanted them someday. He paused. I guess someday arrived faster than she expected. Is she okay, really? She's hurting. Finding out your husband has secret children on your wedding night isn't anyone's fairy tale. Daniel squeezed Sabrina's hand. But Charlotte is strong. She'll process it. And I think part of her is relieved to see Trevor finally stand up to Constance. Trevor ended his call and approached them, looking exhausted but determined. The lawyer's drawing up papers. It'll take a few weeks to fully separate my finances, but it's happening, and he's filing for the restraining order tomorrow morning. Your mother won't take this well, Sabrina warned. I know. She'll probably show up here within the hour once she realizes what I'm doing. Trevor glanced at the twins, his expression softening with wonder and grief. But let her come. She needs to see that her cruelty has consequences. As if summoned by the conversation, Daniel's doorbell rang. Everyone froze. Through the window, they could see Constance's Mercedes parked in the driveway, the woman herself marching toward the porch with the determination of someone accustomed to getting her way. Right on schedule, Daniel muttered. He looked at Sabrina. Do you want to take the twins to another room? Sabrina shook her head. No, I'm done hiding from her, and they need to see that they don't have to be afraid of people who try to use power as a weapon. Charlotte stood, moving protectively closer to the twins. Trevor positioned himself between his mother and the door. Daniel stood beside Sabrina, a united front. When Trevor opened the door, Constance swept in, already talking. Trevor, what is this nonsense about restraining orders and financial separation? Richard called me saying you'd lost your mind. She swept in with barely a glance at Sabrina. She'd already made her threats clear over the phone. But then her eyes landed on the twins playing nearby, and she froze. Her face drained of color as she saw Caleb's profile, Trevor's profile, and understanding crashed over her like ice water. You, Constance hissed, pointing at Sabrina, I told you to stay away from this family. This family invited me here, Sabrina replied, voice steady despite her racing heart. And I don't take orders from you anymore. Trevor, what is that woman doing in Daniel's house, and who are those children? Those children, Trevor said, his voice cold, are my son and daughter, Caleb and Amara, your grandchildren, the ones you made sure I never knew about. Constance's face cycled through expressions: shock, denial, calculation. Trevor, she's lying. This is exactly the kind of scheme I warned you about 6 years ago. Stop. The single word from Trevor carried such authority that Constance actually fell silent. I've seen the timeline. I've seen the resemblance. I've heard from multiple sources what you did. You threw Sabrina out while she was pregnant. You blocked her attempts to contact me. You lied about her stealing from us. You've been stalking and threatening her for trying to move on with her life. I was protecting you. You were controlling me, like you've controlled every aspect of my life since I was born. Trevor's hands were shaking, but his voice stayed firm. Well, I'm done being controlled. I'm 34 years old, Mother. I have a wife, children, and a life you don't get to dictate anymore. Constance's gaze swung to Charlotte. You can't possibly be okay with this. That woman was the help. She tried to trap your husband. That woman, Charlotte interrupted, was a 24-year-old who was victimized by you. And I'm more concerned about the man I married having the spine to stand up to his mother than I am about complicated family trees. Daniel. Constance turned to him, trying a different angle. You can't seriously be considering a relationship with her. She has 2 children by my son. The optics alone. I don't care about optics, Daniel said quietly. I care about Sabrina. I care about those 2 children who've been denied a father because of your cruelty. And I care about my daughter having a husband who can actually be a partner instead of a puppet. Constance looked around the room, seeing united opposition where she'd expected to divide and conquer. Her face twisted with impotent rage. This is absurd. Trevor, if you do this, if you pursue this ridiculous separation, you'll have nothing. No money, no position, no future in the family business. Then I'll have nothing, Trevor replied. But I'll have my self-respect and a chance to know my children. You'll regret this. Constance's voice was venomous. All of you. That woman will ruin your lives just like she tried to ruin ours. The only person who ruined anything, Sabrina said, stepping forward, was you. You threw away a pregnant woman to protect your pride. You lied to your son and kept him from his children. You stalked me and threatened my business, and now you're facing consequences for the first time in your privileged life. Constance's hand rose as if to strike Sabrina. Daniel moved faster, catching the older woman's wrist mid-swing. Don't, he said, voice like ice. You've done enough damage. It's time for you to leave. For a long moment, Constance stood frozen, her wrist in Daniel's grip, facing a room full of people who'd decided she no longer had power over them. Then, something crumbled in her expression, not regret exactly, but the realization that she'd finally pushed too far. You'll all suffer for this, she said, but the threat was hollow now. She wrenched her wrist free and turned to Trevor. When you come crawling back, don't expect me to welcome you. I won't be crawling back, Trevor said simply. Goodbye, Mother. Constance swept out of the house, leaving stunned silence in her wake. Through the window, they watched her Mercedes peel out of the driveway, tires squealing with impotent rage. Is the mean lady gone? Amara asked in the quiet that followed. Trevor laughed, the sound halfway to crying. Yeah, baby, the mean lady is gone. The aftermath of Constance's departure felt like the moment after a storm. Everything still, standing, but changed by the violence of what had passed through. Trevor approached his children slowly, kneeling to their level with Charlotte at his side. Caleb, Amara, I know this is confusing. I'm a stranger to you right now, but I'd really like to get to know you, if that's okay with your mom. Both twins looked at Sabrina for guidance. She nodded permission, and Caleb stepped forward first, always the braver of the two when it came to new situations. Do you like dinosaurs? Caleb asked, his primary metric for judging people. Trevor's smile was tremulous. I love dinosaurs. I used to collect dinosaur books when I was your age. Me too. Do you know about the Spinosaurus? It could swim. And just like that, with the resilience only children possessed, Caleb was chattering about prehistoric creatures while Trevor listened with rapt attention, tears streaming down his face. Amara joined in when the conversation shifted to which dinosaurs could fly, and Charlotte showed them photos on her phone of the pteranodon exhibit at the Natural History Museum. Sabrina watched her children begin to know their father, and the complexity of emotions nearly overwhelmed her. Relief that Trevor was stepping up, grief for the 6 years he'd missed, fear that this fragile new beginning would shatter, and underneath it all, a desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, her children could have the family she'd always dreamed of giving them. Daniel's arm came around her waist, anchoring her. "You okay?" "I don't know," she whispered honestly. "This feels too good to be real. Like I'm going to wake up and it'll all have been a fantasy." "It's real." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "Messy and complicated and real." They stood like that, watching Trevor and Charlotte build tentative connections with the twins, until Amara noticed them and called out, "Mr. Daniel, can we go on the swings now?" Daniel laughed. "Sure, sweetheart. Everyone want to go outside?" The next hour passed in surreal domesticity. The twins played on the swing set while the adults watched from the patio, Daniel pushing them higher while they shrieked with delight. Trevor took hesitant turns, pushing his daughter, his son, learning the rhythm of fatherhood one swing at a time. Charlotte photographed everything, already building the family album they'd all been denied. When the twins finally wore themselves out, they collapsed on the grass, and Trevor lay down between them, all three looking up at clouds. Sabrina watched from the patio as her son pointed out shapes in the sky, and her daughter made up elaborate stories about cloud kingdoms. Trevor's face was transformed, the polished banker facade stripped away to reveal someone younger, more genuine. "He's going to be okay," Charlotte said quietly, appearing at Sabrina's elbow. "With them, I mean. He'll be a good father once he learns how." "You're taking this remarkably well," Sabrina observed. "Finding out your husband has children on your wedding night." Charlotte's smile was sad. "I'd be lying if I said it didn't hurt. But watching him stand up to his mother, really stand up, not just talk about it, showed me something I needed to see. And those kids," she gestured to the trio on the lawn, "they deserve their father, even if the timing is terrible for my pride." "You're extraordinary," Sabrina said. "You know that? I'm my father's daughter." Charlotte glanced at Daniel, who was cleaning up toys from the swing set. "He taught me that family isn't just blood, it's choice, showing up, doing the hard thing because it's right." She turned to Sabrina. "He really cares about you. I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you." Sabrina's eyes burned. "I care about him too, more than I planned to." "Good. He deserves someone who makes him happy, and you deserve someone who won't run when things get complicated." Charlotte squeezed Sabrina's hand. "Welcome to the world's messiest blended family." Evening approached with the golden light that made everything look softer than it was. Trevor and Charlotte left reluctantly, promising to return the next day for more time with the twins. Trevor had knelt in front of his children, asking permission for a hug, and both kids had obliged with the generous affection of children who didn't yet understand betrayal. "I'll be back tomorrow," Trevor promised, "if that's okay with your mom." "Tomorrow," Sabrina agreed. "We'll take this slow. Let them adjust." After they left, Daniel made dinner while Sabrina supervised twins who were simultaneously overtired and wired with excitement. They ate pasta at the kitchen table, Amara and Caleb talking over each other about their day, the swing set, the nice lady Charlotte, and their new friend Trevor, who might be somebody important, but we're not sure yet. After dinner, Daniel set the twins up with a movie, while he and Sabrina cleaned the kitchen side by side, the domestic routine so natural it made Sabrina's heart ache. "Move in with me," Daniel said suddenly, hands deep in soapy water. Sabrina nearly dropped the plate she was drying. "What?" "Move in, you and the twins. Not right away, I know it's fast, but soon. Let's build this family we're stumbling toward." "Daniel, we've known each other for 3 days. And in those 3 days, I've watched you survive revelations that would have broken most people. I've seen you protect your children while being generous to the man who abandoned you. I've watched you be brave when you had every right to run." He turned to face her, hands dripping soapy water onto the floor. "I'm 50 years old, Sabrina. I don't have time to waste pretending I don't know what I want. And I want you. This. Us. You could be making the biggest mistake of your life, or the best decision. He stepped closer, cupping her face with damp hands. I spent 2 years watching my wife die. It taught me that life is too short to play it safe. So yes, this is fast. Yes, it's complicated. But when I look at you, I see my future. Let me be part of yours. Sabrina's tears overflowed, 6 years of loneliness and fear finally cracking open to let hope in. What if I mess this up? What if I'm not ready? Then we'll figure it out together. Daniel's thumbs brushed away her tears. That's what partnership means. You don't have to be perfect or ready or have all the answers. You just have to be willing to try. The twins already love it here, already feel safe. Let me give you all the home you deserve. Sabrina looked into his eyes, gray-blue and steady and full of a devotion she'd stopped believing existed, and surrendered to the impossible hope that maybe fairy tales could happen to broken people who'd survived their darkest chapters. Ask me again in a month, she whispered. Let's take this one day at a time. But Daniel? Yes. Eventually, yes. His smile was incandescent. Then he was kissing her, and Sabrina was kissing him back. 6 years of walls crumbling under the force of connection she'd stopped believing she deserved. When they broke apart, both breathless, Daniel rested his forehead against hers. One day at a time, he agreed, starting with today. From the living room, Caleb called out, "Mama, Mr. Daniel, the movie's over. Can we have popcorn?" They pulled apart, laughing, and went to make popcorn for children who were falling asleep where they sat. Daniel carried Amara upstairs while Sabrina carried Caleb, and they tucked the twins into the guest room that was rapidly becoming their room. "Is Mr. Daniel going to be our new daddy?" Caleb asked sleepily as Sabrina pulled the blanket up to his chin. Her breath caught. "Would you want that? He makes good pancakes, and he doesn't yell, and he looks at you like Aunt Maya looks at chocolate cake." Caleb's logic was 6-year-old perfect. "That seems like good daddy stuff." "What about Trevor?" Sabrina asked carefully. "He's your biological father." "I know, but you can have more than one daddy, right? Like how Eliza at school has her real dad and her stepdad." Caleb yawned hugely. "Trevor seems nice, but Mr. Daniel makes you smile." From her own bed, Amara murmured agreement before succumbing to sleep. Sabrina sat between her children, heart full to bursting, and marveled at their resilience. 6 years she'd carried guilt about raising them without a father, but they were whole and happy and wise in ways that broke her heart. Daniel appeared in the doorway, leaning against the frame, watching her with her children. "They're remarkable." "They are." Sabrina stood, kissing each twin's forehead before following Daniel into the hallway. "Caleb just asked if you were going to be their new daddy." Daniel's expression softened. "And what did you tell him?" "That it's complicated. That Trevor is their biological father, but that family comes in lots of forms." She paused. "He said you make me smile. Apparently that's the most important daddy. Qualification." "Smart kid." Daniel pulled her close. "And for the record, I'd be honored to be any kind of father figure they want, but I'm not trying to replace Trevor. Just add to their family." "Add to," Sabrina repeated, testing the words. "I like that." They stood in the hallway of Daniel's house, soon to be their house eventually, and Sabrina felt the future unfold before her. Not the future she'd planned, with its careful safety and strategic invisibility, but a future built on truth and second chances, and the kind of love that didn't run when things got complicated. Behind them, twins slept peacefully. Ahead of them, Trevor and Charlotte navigated their own complicated healing. And beside her, Daniel Callahan looked at her like she was everything he'd been searching for. 6 years ago, Constance Whitmore had thrown her out like trash. Tomorrow, Sabrina would wake up in a home where she was treasured. The revenge was poetic. But more than that, it was real. 3 months later, the custody arrangement took 6 weeks to finalize. Trevor got supervised visits twice a week, gradually extending to full weekends as he proved himself reliable. He and Charlotte attended family therapy, working through the betrayal and rebuilding trust. Charlotte bonded with the twins, becoming Aunt Charlotte, who brought art supplies and taught them to paint. Constance fought the restraining order, but lost. The photographic evidence of stalking was too damning. She tried to turn society against Trevor for abandoning the family business, but the story leaked, and not the version she wanted told. Several women from her social circle came forward with their own stories: daughters-in-law driven away, grandchildren alienated, families fractured by Constance's need for control. The whisper network Constance had used to destroy others turned against her. Country club memberships were quietly not renewed. Charity board positions were not extended. Invitations dried up. 3 months after the confrontation, Constance showed up unannounced at Trevor and Charlotte's new house. Charlotte answered the door, Amara holding her hand. "I want to see my son," Constance said, but her voice lacked its usual command. "Trevor's at the park with Caleb," Charlotte replied. "They go every Saturday morning, father-son time." Constance's eyes moved to Amara, seeing her granddaughter for the first time without the filter of rage. "She looks like my mother," she whispered. "She does," Charlotte agreed, "and she has Trevor's smile and Sabrina's kindness. She's wonderful." "I made a mistake," Constance said, the admission clearly costing her everything. Charlotte's expression softened slightly. "Yes, you did. Several of them. Whether Trevor chooses to forgive you is his decision, but if you want any relationship with your grandchildren, you'll need to apologize to their mother first. Genuinely apologize." Constance looked stricken. "I don't know how." "Then maybe it's time you learned." Charlotte closed the door gently but firmly, leaving Constance alone on the porch with the consequences of her choices. 6 months later, Constance would show up at Baptiste events with a handwritten letter for Sabrina. The apology would be stiff, inadequate, but real. Sabrina would read it once, file it away, and continue with her day. Forgiveness, if it came, would take years, but at least the door was open. Baptiste events didn't just survive, it thrived, despite Constance's attempts to poison the well. She'd made calls to society contacts, spreading whispers about Sabrina's scandal and unprofessional conduct. But the truth proved more compelling than Constance's lies. Charlotte had written a detailed review on every wedding planning site, praising Sabrina's grace under pressure and professional excellence. She'd recommended Sabrina to 3 wealthy friends planning weddings, each booking immediately. Daniel's business connections brought in corporate events, and his reputation for integrity meant his endorsement carried weight. More surprisingly, several clients who'd heard Constance's version reached out directly to Sabrina, wanting to hear the truth. When they learned the real story, single mother, abandoned while pregnant, built successful business through hard work, sympathy swung decisively in Sabrina's favor. The scandal Constance tried to create backfired spectacularly. Within 3 months, Sabrina had hired 2 new coordinators to handle the volume. Turns out, people respected resilience more than they feared old money's disapproval. Maya became the twins' official godmother, a role she took with fierce joy. She also started dating Daniel's business partner, which made family dinners even more tangled and wonderful. And Sabrina? She moved into Daniel's house on a Saturday in October, the twins racing through rooms claiming spaces for their toys, while Daniel carried boxes and laughed at the chaos. They hung Lydia's photos alongside new ones, blended family portraits that captured the beautiful mess they'd become. Charlotte had helped choose which photos stayed and which moved to albums, not erasing her mother, but making space for new memories. She'd placed Lydia's wedding photo beside a new one, Daniel and Sabrina on the porch swing, twins climbing over them, everyone laughing. "Mom would love this," Charlotte had said, eyes bright with tears. "She'd love that you found each other, that we're all messy and complicated and choosing each other anyway." The evening of the move-in, after the twins were asleep and boxes were mostly unpacked, Daniel found Sabrina on the porch swing, staring at stars. "Regrets?" he asked, settling beside her. "Not even one." She leaned into his warmth. 6 years ago, I was thrown out in the rain with nothing. Tonight, I have everything." "We have everything," Daniel corrected. He pulled a small box from his pocket and Sabrina's breath caught. "I know we said we'd take things slow, and we will. This isn't a proposal, not yet, but it's a promise." He opened the box to reveal not a ring, but a key, antique brass hung on a delicate chain. "This was Lydia's," Daniel said softly. "The key to our first apartment. She kept it her whole life, said it represented the beginning of our adventure." He lifted the necklace, fastening it around Sabrina's neck. "I want you to have it, as a symbol that this, us, the twins, this beautiful, complicated family, is the beginning of our adventure." Sabrina's fingers closed around the key, warm from his pocket, and the symbolism wasn't lost on her. Lydia's blessing, a new beginning, permission to love without guilt. "When you do propose," she said, voice thick with emotion, "I'm going to say yes." Daniel's smile could have powered cities. "I'm counting on it." The revenge was poetic, but the love was real. And that made all the difference. What moved you most about this journey? Was it Sabrina's courage in facing the family who destroyed her? Daniel's immediate protection when the truth exploded? Charlotte's grace in accepting her husband's complicated past? Or Trevor's late but genuine journey toward accountability? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever had to face someone from your past who hurt you deeply? Did you run, or did you stand your ground? And when love came knocking at an inconvenient time, did you open the door? Share your stories in the comments. This community is built on the understanding that real love is messy, complicated, and worth every risk. Tell me where you're listening from today. Whether you're tuning in from a bustling city or a quiet small town, from the United States or somewhere across the globe, I love knowing Sabrina's story reached you wherever you are. If this story resonated with you, hit that subscribe button so you never miss another tale of resilience and love, and give this video a thumbs up. Remember this: you are not defined by who discarded you. You're defined by how you rose from those ashes. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's living so fully, loving so deeply, and building something so beautiful that the people who threw you away realize exactly what they lost. With love from Dear Love Diaries.